Members of council, if I can please have you come to your seats. Okay, thank you very much. This meeting is now resumed. Members, before the recess, council is debating the mayor's first key item, EX 9.1, on the Toronto, Ontario Transit update. We will return to the mayor's key matter after the release of member holds. Are there any releases? Yes, I'm going to get to you, Councillor Grimes. Councillor Bailao.
Yes, Madam Speaker. I'm just looking for the page. If you give me a second. Page 7, item... sorry, not page 7. I'm so sorry, Madam Speaker. Page 4, EX 9.10. I can release that. Saving at-risk affordable housing units, Tippett Road.
Okay, on page 4, EX 9.10. On favor? Carried. Thank you. Councillor Holyday.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm going to read a number of things out, so I'm going to ask members to keep an eye on this. As you recall, we brought the audit agenda, a substantial amount of the agenda, forward to this council. I think on a quick release I can get rid of most of the items, but if any members would, if I may finish, if any members want to hold an item, maybe they could shout, but I'll try to quick release a number of the items. So I'm going to start with AU 4.6, headed Fleet Services Operational Review, Phase 2, Stronger Asset Management Needed. I'm happy to release that item.
Okay, is there anybody that wants to hold that item down?
Would you be able to do this by the end of the releases? Because this allows a whole lot of people not to be waiting for these items to come forward. I did, and I'm ready to release them.
Okay, so Councillor Holyday, if you can speak to Councillor Perks, and then we can decide which ones are going to be released. Councillor Matlow.
Could you come, just...
Oh, sorry. I don't know why. I thought I seen your name there. Councillor Cole. Councillor Cole,
Yes,
quick
I
releases.
just talked to staff, and I want to release EC8.
What page?
Page 5, Madam Chair.
Yes.
EC 8.10, the Uptown Young Business Improvement Area Board of Management changes. I'm releasing that.
Okay, on page 5, EC 8.10. On favor? Recorded vote? Okay, recorded vote.
Councillor Fillion.
That's what I was going to do.
Councillor Matlow. Councillor Bailao, please.
The item is adopted unanimously, 17 in favor.
Thank you. Councillor Karygiannis.
Madam Speaker, on page 7, IE 8.7, IE 8.8, and IE 8.9, I'd like to release them.
Yes, can you read the
Automated Vehicles Tactical Plan and Readiness, IE 8.7, IE 8.8, update on council requested road safety initiatives, recommended speed limit reductions, and IE 8.9, technical amendments to bicycle lane reductions.
Madam Speaker, I'd like to...
Oh, okay, hold on. Which
IE 8.8, I like to hold.
you like to hold that? Okay.
The rest I'm okay.
All right. So IE 8.7 on favor? Carried. IE 8.9 on favor? Carried. Councillor Matlow.
Madam Speaker, I'm happy to release on page 3, PH 8.8, response to Auditor General's outstanding recommendation regarding Section 37 and Section 45 funds not received in 2008-2017 approvals, and to move the supplemental report.
Okay. So Councillor Matlow's releasing on page 3, PH. Pardon? Okay. So on the supplementary report, first on favor, carried. On the item on favor, carried. Councillor Holliday.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Hopefully this is helpful. Starting with audit item number 6, I'd like to quick release them. I can read the titles quickly. I don't believe they're contentious, but if a member has a wish to hold, I'll be happy to keep them held. AU 4.6, Fleet Services Operational Review, Phase 2, Stronger Asset Management Needed. Happy to release that.
Okay. On favor, carried.
AU 4.9, Auditor General's Office 2020 Work Plan.
On favor, carried.
AU 4.10, Auditor General's 2019 Consolidated Status Report on Outstanding Audit Recommendations.
On favor, carried.
AU 4.11, Auditor General's Office Forensic Unit Status Report on Outstanding Recommendations.
On favor, carried.
AU 4.17, Auditor General's Office Report on the results of applying specified auditing procedures to financial information other than financial statements for the year ended December 31st, 2018.
On favor, carried.
AU 4.18, headed Transparency in the City's Financial Information.
On favor, carried.
AU 4.21, Arenas 2018 Audited Financial Statements Update.
On favor, carried.
And finally, AU 4.22, Community Centers 2018 Audited Financial Statements Update.
On favor, carried. Thank you. Councillor Grimes, you would like to make an announcement?
Yes. Thank you, Madam Speaker. With Halloween just a few days away, I want to bring your attention to an important issue facing 400,000 kids in Canada with accessibility challenges, trick-or-treating. These kids often feel discouraged and left out when homes are not accessible, because most aren't. A dad in Long Branch in my ward had a realization of a couple of years ago. He decided to do something about it. Rich started Treat Accessibility, a movement that raised awareness about kids with disabilities on Halloween and encouraged people to take a few easy steps to make their homes accessible for all trick-or-treaters. Treat Accessibility started with one sign in 2017 and has grown to 25,000 signs across Canada this year. I have a few signs here I'd be happy to share with my colleagues, or they're available for free at Home Depot locations. Please visit www.treataccessibility.com for more information. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Councillor Grimes. Okay, thank you. So we'll now go back to the Mayor's key item, which is EX 9.1, Toronto, Ontario Transit Update. If you can please put the names up on the screen. We were at questions. Okay, Councillor Baila.
You're done, Leighton? Okay. Through you, Madam Speaker, I just want to ask the city manager if he could explain the legislation that was passed with regards to the lines approved by the provincial government.
Madam Speaker, the legislation gives the provincial government the authority to take land from the city if necessary to build the lines, and it also designates particular lines as being within the exclusive jurisdiction of the provincial government and prohibits the city from doing work on those lines or similar lines.
So Was the Ontario line legislated? And
Speaker, yes, it was. The four priority lines were legislated, or three, I'm sorry, the three.
so, did we have a choice to continue our work that we were doing with the relief line as per our plans?
The city is statutorily prohibited from pursuing work on similar lines, which would include the lines that the city was working on, yes.
So the law actually forbids us from doing the work. So we would have to stop. So if we didn't come to an agreement with the province, what would happen over the next 3 years?
The legislation establishes a framework that empowers the province to take land that it requires to build the lines on its own, and it provides that the province can take those properties with or without compensation.
So we would run the risk of them just going off without us at the table and just doing whatever?
Yes, that would be the risk.
Okay. And what we're doing right now is actually, are we sharing information? Are we overlooking what they're doing? Are we, how are we making sure that our experiences at the table, that what we've learned and how we built this, how our community voices are at the table? Like, how are we doing that?
So, through the speaker, we are certainly sharing information. We are communicating to each other matters of interest and concern. We are subject to what happens here today. We will continue to have conversations around the interests that are important to us, whether it be transit-oriented design, matters related to recouping funding that we had committed, a whole host of things which are identified in the report. So we will continue at the table to resolve these issues to the best interests of the city.
Can you explain to me how does the PTIF money work? How does it, what are our obligation towards those funds? Somebody?
Well, the city is required to nominate projects that it wishes to endorse to the federal government, and our allocation, the total federal allocation is $4.9 billion. Council has previously approved 2 projects to be nominated for PITA funding. They include the Smart Track proposal as well as the Bloor-Young proposal, both valued at estimated value at $1.1 billion. So the remaining amount is roughly $3.8 billion.
And are those 2 projects that we had expressed interest in having subsidized, are they at any risk by what we're doing here today?
They are not.
They're not. So we'll continue, the funds will be available, we'll continue to proceed with that work, and now we're just working on the lines that have been legislated by the provincial government.
Yes, essentially the Ontario line as well as the line to east extension.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Perks?
Thank you. To Mr. Leary. Mr. Leary, the last time we debated this, I asked you a question about what the job one that you think the TTC has in front of it. What was your answer?
State of good repair.
Thank you very much.
To you, Chair.
Mr. Farag, the agreement we have here frees up how many existing dollars for state of good repair?
It frees up approximately $1.24 billion of funded allocations that can now be used for state of good repair.
Thank you, Mr. Leary. What is your unfunded state of good repair?
Over the next 15 years, it's $24 billion through each year.
$24 billion. Okay, thank you. To the city manager, what we are approving today, if it's not amended, directs you to go negotiate a preliminary agreement. There's a term sheet, attachment 6. Does that term sheet contain any commitment of money or a percentage for state of good repair funding of the TTC?
It certainly commits us to providing our redirected funding to state of good repair.
I'm talking in addition to the 1.25. Does it commit the province to any dollar figure or percentage of cost for future any of that $24 billion that Mr. Leary talked about?
So I don't think it specifically mentions a number, but the understanding is that it's not just the 1.2 billion, it's also an additional amount that would add up to just over $5 billion. So monies
No,
that
I'm sorry to correct you. That's money that we don't have budgeted that we
Correct.
are supposed
No,
to
that's-
find.
I'm not-
I'm asking about, does the province, in the term sheet, have any commitment to spend any amount of money or any percentage on our state of good repair backlog?
not in the way that you phrased it, no.
Does the term sheet give the City of Toronto access to a new revenue tool, such as road tolls?
No.
Does the term sheet give the province sole responsibility for the planning, design, construction of the 4 priority projects? According to point 2 in the term sheet. Sole responsibility.
Correct.
So despite anything that council has moved at the executive committee or here today, encouraging you to get more, the term sheet we are being asked to get you to go get a preliminary agreement out of says they will have sole responsibility for planning and design.
As per item 2, correct.
Yes, thank you very much. My understanding is that the province's intention is to settle some of the details around alignment, what's above and what ground, below ground, the number of stations, by putting it out to tender and seeing what different private sector offers come forward. Is that correct?
I think that is part of it, yes, that's true.
Okay. If we give you authority to go and sign this, you go and sign this, and they ignore advice from the community or the local councillor, we've already committed to giving them the ability to design, build, implement these lines, and to use the federal money that we have available for transit expansion. We've already done that once you sign this. Is that correct?
Once you sign, that's not to say, though, if there was a material change in that undertaking, that there would be an opportunity for me to report back.
You could report back, but council has already authorized that the federal money for transit expansion would go to the province, and has already signed the preliminary agreement, which gives them sole responsibility for design and construction and so forth. Correct?
Through the Speaker, in accordance with the terms that we've outlined here.
Which, if I am correct, we take this decision today. You're authorized to go sign this preliminary agreement according to this term sheet. They go out to the private sector. The private sector says we want only 2 stations, and they're both above ground. But it's in the corridor that we've agreed to. It's the Ontario line. We have given away already the federal money and acknowledged that they have sole responsibility for the planning and design. That is correct, is it not?
Yeah, again, I would draw your attention to item 5. Again, as long as what they're bringing forward to the market materially meets the city's expectations, if it materially meets the expectations, then your conclusion would be correct. If it doesn't, something else.
Thank you. Okay, we'll go to speakers. Councillor Matlow to speak.
Madam Speaker, I have 3 motions. One motion is, let's go through item by item. So one is with regard to understanding the details of what we are signing on to with respect to the Ontario line. And then the other 2 motions speak to the added money in the provincial plans to add a 3-stop subway in Scarborough and to bury the Eglinton West, rather than to move forward with the light rail plan, the originally proposed light rail plan for Scarborough, and to move forward with the clearly the better way to go, which is the above ground plan for Eglinton West, given that no expert, Doug Ford has said it, but no expert has suggested that burying actually makes any sense. And from a fiscal perspective, it's bonkers. So what this does, though, in turn, is that I'm requesting that we use the financial savings to invest in the Eglinton East extension to U of T Scarborough and actually change lives in Scarborough by building a network of the Eglinton extension out to U of T Scarborough,
and then the LRT line replacing the RT to Malvern, the way that it was originally envisaged. In fact, if we had gone ahead with Transit City, we would have the Etobicoke Finch West line, the Eglinton Crosstown, which is the survivor in all of this. Shepherd wouldn't have been sidelined. Jane wouldn't have been forgotten. Waterfront West would have been built. And we would have transit to Malvern. And all of that would be operating today. All of that would be operating today. Instead, plans change and change and change and change and change all over again. But they become far less evidence-based and far more expensive and serve far fewer people who we are entrusted to serve. In fact, this plan would spend per new rider $618,000 per rider. You could essentially, I say this rhetorically, of course, but you could essentially purchase a small condo and a car for each one of those new riders. It is just an absurd use of the very few dollars that we have to invest in our infrastructure priorities. Moreover, I see a lot of exciting potential in the Ontario line. I like that it extends further north than the phase 1 of the relief line. I welcome Doug Ford as a recent convert to light rail as a use to provide transit service to people throughout our city. It is remarkable, though, isn't it, that he used to say subway, 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 or nothing, and all of a sudden he's into light rail metro projects. In fact, he's replacing a proposed subway with light rail. But we don't know the details. We don't know the technology. We don't know how the stops are being identified. We don't know a lot of things about this plan. And I don't know, if you're like me, speaking of the car, I wouldn't purchase a car without knowing the model of the car and knowing, just some basic details about it. I'd want to understand that, and I think it's reasonable to ask some of these questions before putting our federal dollars towards it. Mayor Tory, you may remember, when he discounted the 3-stop proposal instead of his 1-stop proposal for Scarborough. To paraphrase, it's something like the 3-stop subway was written on a back of a napkin. Just dismissive about that proposal, and I agreed with the mayor at that time. But all of a sudden, now this plan is being sold as, the best thing since sliced bread. Of course there have been improvements. In fact, I moved a motion long ago that we should only stay at the table if we are discussing expanding and improving transit rather than, giving away the secrets to help the upload. I think we achieved, in many ways, along the same direction there, where improvements have been made. Ontario line exciting, but I want to know the details before I sign off and say hurrah. I also want to know that we are spending money wisely in Scarborough to improve service to more people for fewer dollars. I want to know that we're not going to bury common sense in the ground in Etobicoke while we bury a line that was meant to be at grade. And I want to know that we're going to use every transit dollar wisely to serve as many people as possible in the coming years. And I also don't think that uploading should be just a bargaining chip at the table. You either do it or don't based on good public policy, not as an exchange like a poker chip to achieve the goals that Doug Ford has.
Thank you, Councillor Matlow. Councillor Pasternak.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd just like to thank staff for all the work they've done on this transit file, and of course congratulate the mayor for all the work he's done. What you're looking at is the largest urban transit funding package in Canadian history. And this is a commitment to build high-level transit in Canada's largest city that the people of Toronto have been asking for a generation. People using transit today, and I am a transit user, at the end of the day, they don't really care who has built the line. What they are looking for is reliable, safe, and affordable transit. This package may not be perfect, but it comes pretty close. It is what Torontonians have been asking for. It gets people out of their cars, it gets people to their place of work, to their place to their homes, and to their educational institutions. We want to make sure that there's no more politicization of transit, that we adopt what's before us today. There's still work to do, and we'll still be seeing a master plan in the future. There'll be bumps along the way. When you're doing this kind of infrastructure in a tight urban setting, There'll be bumps along the way when it comes to traffic management, when it comes to noise, when it comes to vibration, when it comes to expropriation. These are all very difficult issues. But I think the city is ready to move on, to get these deals done, and to get Metrolinx to build. At the same time, I think we have to look at the fiscal responsibility of the city. The province has agreed to fund most of it. At the same time, I think it's important that our CFO can keep a contingency to make sure that we are prepared if there are any kind of unknowns within the agreement, such as civic services, civic improvements that we've been billed for in the past, or repairs to infrastructure should such be damaged along the way, including hydro and stormwater management and sewer management. That being said, once again, I want to congratulate the mayor on this package before us. I think it is an excellent thing for the city of Toronto. It's an excellent thing for the Greater Toronto region, and it's excellent for the province. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Cole?
I have a motion, Madam Speaker. I have a motion. Is it up there?
Well, did you give it to staff?
Yes.
Do we have it? Do we have the motion? No, we don't.
Anthony, you want to second that?
Well, Councillor Cole, you have to give it to the staff.
I did,
Way
but there's
before
been
you
a
speak.
miscommunication.
Okay, according to staff, they do not have your motion, Councillor Cole.
Here, Anthony,
Put your name down lower.
put my name down lower.
Take your name off. You do it.
Here.
Okay, that's a notice of motion. That's not an amendment to this item. So
Yeah,
if
that's
you
my
s-
one amendment.
Turn your mic off, Mike.
Are you talking about a motion without notice, not on this item?
It's an amendment to the item.
Okay, okay. So I don't have this.
Okay.
Okay, come on. Councillor Layton, are you ready?
Yes, thank you very much. I've got a couple of motions. Motion A, that City Council amend Executive Committee Recommendation 3 by adding the following between City Manager and City Council. And subject to all transit-oriented development, prioritizing inclusionary zoning and affordable housing requirements while advancing the principles of good planning to the satisfaction of the Deputy City Manager, Infrastructure, Development Services, and the Chief Planner and Executive Director, City Planning. And so that the recommendation now reads as follows. It's up there on the screen. If motion A fails, that City Council requests the City Manager and the Deputy City Manager, Infrastructure and Development to request Metrolinx to ensure that transit-oriented development prioritizes inclusionary zoning and affordable housing requirements while advancing the principles of good planning to the satisfaction of the Deputy City Manager, Infrastructure Development Services, and the Chief City Planner and Executive Director, City Planning. Motion C, that City Council direct the Deputy City Manager, Infrastructure and Development Services, and the Chief Executive Officer, Toronto Transit Commission, to ensure there will be enough buses available should the Scarborough Rapid Transit fail earlier than the completion date of the Line 2 extension, and that this does not impact other services provided by the Toronto Transit Commission. D, that City Council request the Chief Financial Officer and Treasurer, in consultation with the General Manager, TTC, as part of the 2020 capital budget, to report on an accelerated capital plan for the Toronto Transit Commission, made possible by a 1% increase in the City Building Fund. To characterize this proposal as an actual plan to build transit would be overly generous. What we have instead in front of us is a half-baked drawing based on nothing more than some conversations between the Metrolinx and the TTC. They've taken some of the work that TTC have done and said, how can we shoehorn our idea of public transit into it? We don't know the technology. We're at too preliminary a stage to really have a good grasp of what this will cost. We don't know at the end of the day how it's going to integrate into our existing system. We don't even know where the stations are going to be for one of the lines. Some of the very basic things that make transit planning possible, we have no idea. We heard just in the final question of this debate from Councillor Perks that once we vote yes, they can come back with a radically different plan and we won't have any say about it. So let's keep that in mind when this thing actually all shakes loose. What we do know, however, is that if you live in Scarborough, you're going to have another delay. You know, it strikes me that we've now matched the number of transit plans under our current administration as we did under Mayor Ford's administration. It was 3 plans there, 3 plans now. We went from 3 Ford-era plans, not all decided by him, but 3 Ford-era plans to 2 Tory-era plans, and now a mix of the two. The commitment we make because of these long-term visions is such a critical and important part of it. As elections change leadership, as people now think that they're cutting a new deal, this is what is taking us down this plan of empty promises. But in this case, you know, I don't fault the mayor. I don't fault our TTC leadership. I don't fault our city manager. We were put in this place by another level of government. We were put in this place, in this place by Premier Ford deciding to once again turn the city of Toronto upside down. Pencils down, everyone. No more planning the projects that we had under the previous administration. It's time to move ahead with a new plan. If we keep going like this, nothing will ever get built. I'm limited, though, in my choices, because it's either you support this half-baked plan and then see the next plan that's just around the corner, no doubt, if we keep at this pace, or we get locked into a war with the province and see absolutely nothing get done in the next 2 years. I have no doubt we're going to be having this same debate no matter what we end up supporting at this council.
Thank you. We do have a question for you. Councillor Bradford, 3 minutes.
Yep, thanks very much. Just a point of clarification. Are you familiar with the recent provincial changes to the legislation, growth plan, and Bill 108 that limit the permissions around inclusionary zonings to MTSA's major transit station areas?
Yes, I just want to make sure they actually implement them. I have no faith that this provincial government is going to do anything they say.
Fair enough. So I'm just trying to understand if that's the regulations that exist on the books today, beyond, because these are all MTSAs, and they're required to, that's where inclusionary zoning will be used. It's a shame. We should be using it elsewhere. But right now it's just around MTSAs where these are going to be MTSAs. How does your motion, I guess, what above and beyond is your motion trying to accomplish there?
Well, what my motion is trying to do is to make sure that our staff, our professional planners, are making decisions on this, and not the province, not the Premier, and not the Minister of Municipal Affairs. Because you know what they did to the last plan we sent them? They tore it up. They tore up our downtown plan, turned it on its head, and took away all the great work that our staff did. I would much prefer that this plan is conditional on our chief planner being satisfied that we're getting the level of affordable housing that we need in this city.
Could we put the motion, I'm sorry, I was trying to like parse through it, and can we get it on the screen? I'm just trying to
I don't
understand.
have a copy anymore.
Yeah, you don't have it, did you just rip it?
I just tore it out.
I'm just trying to
I tore out my
understand
copy. I was holding the motion. You asked me a
It's
question.
like actually a problem with the growth plan changes and Bill 108 changes is in fact that they're restricting inclusionary zoning just to MTSAs.
Can we put the motion?
But all
on?
of these things are going to
I
be
think
MTSAs.
it's motion 3.
Mo-
Sorry,
I think it was
motion
the
2.
first one.
Motion 1 and 2 are essentially are essentially the same, except one makes it, the first one makes it a
This one's,
condition.
it's the other one. This
So
is
the
the
language,
one that,
the language is the same, but the first one makes it conditional.
right, so it's just, I'm trying to understand if they're already contemplating that IZ's actually only going to take place at MTSAs, and that's a problem, separate issue, we'll park that. But what does this do? What is your contemplation above and beyond that when the regs already specify that IZ will take place at MTSAs? These are MTSAs.
But I'm just not confident, Councillor, that the provincial government will do what they say they're going to do. So I'd prefer to take the only leverage we have right now, and that's us signing this agreement, saying our chief planner needs to be satisfied with what the province is allowing us to do with respect to both what good planning is and for inclusionary zoning on those sites. Because right now, correct me if I'm wrong, that the ministry could either not approve our plan for inclusionary zoning around transit hubs. They could also decide on their own to approve something altogether different through a municipal zoning order.
Thank
so
you.
I'd ask you, what's the harm in us ensuring that our chief planner is satisfied with the level of affordable housing around these sites? I see
you.
absolutely no issue with that.
Thank you, Councillor Layton. Councillor Perks, 3 minutes, clarification.
Thank you. A point of clarification following on the questions that you just had with Councillor Bradford. Are you aware that the decision we are making today says that according to the term, we are approving the term sheet?
Yes.
Yes. Are you aware that item 6D in the term sheet says that they will pursue transit-oriented development for the Smart Track, GO, and provincial projects, which will advance both the creation and capture of value to offset provincial capital costs?
Certainly doesn't sound like affordable housing is one of their priorities.
So given that what we're being asked to do today says that capturing value is actually the goal around transit stations, do you think it's necessary that we approve your motion to remind the province that inclusionary zoning is our priority, not them capturing value by getting highest and best use?
I think it's probably safe to assume that affordable housing is going to be down their list of priorities when they're trying to capture value to pay for these subway stations that may or may not actually get built at the end of the day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Holliday, 3 minutes, clarification.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just wanted to continue on the questioning from Councillor Bradford. I want to understand the mechanics of what was proposed, and if I could ask that the motion go back up on the screen just to help us here. I've got a copy. But it says that, number 3 basically says that Council endorsed the reallocation of federal funding under the ISIP program, subject to a bunch of things. And subject to entering the preliminary agreement, that's would possibly be an outcome of this council decision, in anticipation of the realization of the city's project inspection expectations, and subject to all transit-oriented development prioritizing inclusionary zoning, and it goes on to say basically a decision point is with our staff. My question is, at what point in time on a calendar would council then endorse the ISIP program? This says our staff have to agree to a bunch of conditions around these development around these sites. And the way that I'm seeing this is we've got to look at the actual development proposals to make sure they fit with good city planning. So how is this going to function?
Well, I suspect what will happen is the proposal is going to come from, or the once they have the locations of where the stations are going to be, because we don't know that yet, or before that, they will have to come up with some principles of development of what will happen around these stations. And I want to make sure that inclusionary zoning is one of them, that affordable housing is in the mix in any transit-oriented development. Because again, as was pointed out by the previous question, that doesn't seem to be their priority in this case. And I want to make sure it's not the Minister of Municipal Affairs or the Premier saying, we can say no to affordable housing, or it can have this small amount. Instead, I would prefer our chief planner giving his best advice to ensure that he's satisfied that the amount of affordable housing is reflective of the city's need and policy to ensure that we have affordable places
So
to
this
live.
is a very, very detailed ask of our staff. This is deep analysis, especially around the principles of good city planning and to the satisfaction of some staff members. So this is a chicken and egg question to you, is how on earth could we do this detailed level of analysis and still realize that at the outset of the project, City Council would have to commit to the funding in order to get the ball rolling on the whole thing, or we don't have a project without the funding. So what's the intent? Is the intent to kill the project?
Councillor, we're about to vote on something we have absolutely no information about. How is asking our city staff, our expert city staff, to give their opinion when these plans start to come through to give their approval about some simple principles like inclusionary zoning, which we've been studying for years? You think the problem is our city staff not having enough information. Now we're about to approve a $30 billion transit project with zero information about what the technology is.
Councillor Holliday, that was your last question. Thank you. Councillor Fletcher to speak. Councillor Fletcher?
I also
Okay,
have a few
Councillor
motions,
Fletcher.
Speaker, to go up. I also have a little video I'm going to play later, so I'd really like the IT guys to come down and be able to help me when I get to that time in my speech. That's one, basically looking at all of those bridges, including the one that has to come down for the Gardner, and what that means to be putting an above-ground grade lane, another track, 2 more tracks. There's another motion there. That is the 6-meter safety requirement between heavy rail and passenger rail, and I think that that has to be met, has to be our standard for safety. And there's also the portals will be going right in the middle of Riverdale Plaza, which is a major transit station. And so we need to look and see what the impact financially and otherwise would be for that, for redevelopment there and meeting those targets. So those are the 3 motions. I'd just like to, first of all, on this, you know I'm going to talk about the Ontario line, but thank the mayor for advancing some motions that came from my community last week. About 25 people came. They spoke. I think they've sent in about 280 letters about the situation of this above-ground line for 2 kilometers through their backyards, taking out the community center, people from the Sisters of St. Joseph, the impact on those tenants, the impact on green space and parks, and the fact that trains would be going every 45 seconds. There are 3 tracks already. GO has 3 tracks. They need a 4th for RER Smart Track. And they also, this line still has VIA on it and freight trains on it. 2 more going on would add up to 6 trains, 45 seconds each for the Ontario line, and about 2.5 minutes each for GO. So I do want to say that the Ontario line will be running under the same roads, the same sewers, and have the same problems that we found in the transit assessment that was done for the relief line. We have spent a lot of years looking at how to run an underground line on our roads with the amount of infrastructure that we have. And to remind you that 2 sections will have brand new environmental assessments. And I would assume the city will be there. I would assume many citizens will be there. And I'm hoping that Metrolinx does not stand aloof from environmental assessments. The section in Ward 14 will be amended. They're going to use the work that was already done by the TTC staff, by our transit planning staff, for parts of that new zone in the central, and then they're going to amend it by running this line above ground. And I do thank the mayor for adding a question mark to, can we look at running that below ground? Can we enclose that? We need to look at the impacts on this community, which will be very, very severe. And friends, I've been through a relief line assessment. It was a line on a map. Guess what? We had to look at a number of options. Finally, something was chosen, and then we had to see how it could be built and what's there. This is just a line on the map. The Ontario line is just a line on the map. And when you get up to the north part, and how do you cross that Don Valley? It's very wide. Where does it come out? Everybody's a little nervous about that. So all of these big issues for communities really, really need to be looked at very carefully. I just want to thank our staff, TTC staff, transit planning staff from planning for the work that they did on the relief line, for the years of their life that they put, for working with the community in the way that they did. That's a standard that should be met by Metrolinx. That's a standard I know. That's the environmental assessment I'm expecting when Metrolinx comes and does their amendment, or does their other two new ones through your ward, Councillor Cressy, and through Councillor Robinson's ward. So while it looks great on the map, it's only on the map. I do have a little video here that I just want to show you the trains, in case you don't go that neighborhood. 6 of them go. Nope. There is nowhere else in this city that has 6 rail lines running that close to residential and that close to a road.
Thank you, Councillor Fletcher.
And there it is.
Councillor Cole.
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. I have a motion, put it up on the board, that City Council direct the City Manager to request the Province of Ontario to defer its planned upzoning in the Young Eglinton area until the Ontario line is completed. 2, the City Council directs the City Manager to reaffirm the City's concern about the existing overcrowding on Line 1 and the increased overcrowding that will occur at Eglinton Station as a result of proposed higher densities proposed by the Province's Bill 108 and the overriding of Midtown Focus Plan, OPA 405. And 3, the City Council directs City Manager to inform the Province of Ontario that the increased overcrowding at Eglinton Station will be dramatically increased when the crosstown is completed. I guess the sort of silver lining here is that this is the only forum where this $30+ billion project will be debated. It won't be debated for 1 minute at Queen's Park. At Ottawa, they don't even consider it worth talking about transit, yet they're giving money. So at least here, there is public debate about this very important investment in the future of Toronto. So that's one of the benefits of having a city council. The ironic thing in all this is the showcase line, some people call it the vanity line, is the Ontario line. And it's almost a repeat of what Bill Davis did when he forced the city to take on the SRT, which was supposed to be the answer to all the transit issues across North America, and the city gladly installed the SRT, and the poor people of Scarborough have suffered ever since with that rinky-dink system that's been afflicting the people of Scarborough. So there's nothing here that's going to solve these major transit issues, but at least I can say it's an attempt, a very improved attempt from what it was a couple of months ago when we were told, take it or leave it, this is what you're getting, shut up and accept the good graces of the gurus up at Queen's Park. At least there's been a positive turn, and they've actually sat down with our officials, as we're told, and they've come up with a meaningful dialogue according to it. So that's been an improvement, a dramatic improvement. As you know, there's a big change at Queen's Park. They backtracked on almost everything from nuts to noodles. So anyways, so this is a continuing pattern of saying they made mistakes and they admit the mistakes and they're coming. So thank God for that. And then the ironic thing about all this is that this is not, the Ontario line is not a subway. It was supposed to be subway, as someone said. It's a monorail elevated system for the most part, running with secret technology that nobody knows what it is. So that worries me because that means that projected date of 2027 for the completion of the line is really a pipe dream. So therefore, what I think has to be done is, at least I want to protect the residents in the Yonge corridor, especially my area, Yonge and Eglinton, because we are not only faced with overcrowding today that is trying to be managed by the TDC, but we are going to be hit with another huge overcrowding issue in a couple of years when the crosstown stations opens up. And then on top of it, as you know, earlier this year, we were given the gift of Bill 108, which told us we weren't building enough density at Yonge and Eglinton. We had to build more. And then, as Councillor Layton so graphically mentioned, they ripped up our 5-year attempts to come to some kind of plan for the area. So that's why I'm being very modest in my request. I'm not asking to change the agreement. We'll never do that. But at least I'm saying, please, as a city council, let's stand up and say, please defer the upzoning, the extra densities at Yonge and Eglinton so people can, over the next while, safely get on the subway in the morning without waiting for 5 subway cars. So if they're waiting for 5 subway cars right now, if the densities increase as a result of 108, if the Eglinton crosstown is completed, you know, it's going to make Tokyo look like, you know, Bessarion Station. That's what's going to happen. So all I ask, please get the city manager to say, give us a bit of a timeout on your upzoning and maybe go forward with some of the principles of the Midtown and Focus Plan so we can at least wait for this grand line that is someday going to complete it to relieve us of the congestion. That's all I ask for, a very modest proposal.
Thank you. So, Councillor Cole, motion 1 and 2 I'll have to rule out of order because council has already taken a position on that in July. Okay? So just motion 3 is on the table. It came through in July. CC 9.0. I'll show you a copy of it if you want. Okay, so 1 and 2 is out of order. Deputy Mayor Minnan-Wong.
Yeah, because you saved.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have 3 motions. These were essentially motions that were moved at the TTC. Councillor Robinson would have moved them, but as we know, she can't be here today, so I'm moving them for the commission. Okay, and I'll just briefly speak. The first thing I'd like to say is, while I'm not voting for Councillor Layton's motion, if I had a chance to vote twice against Councillor Layton's motion to raise taxes, I'd do that. So I would advise members of council not to vote for the tax increase. I appreciate and expect Councillor Layton to move those type of motions, so he hasn't, as a councillor that likes to raise taxes, he's true to form, and I congratulate him for being true to form. And to Councillor Fletcher, who said that this is just simply a line on a map, the distinguishing point is the city's plan to build the downtown relief line. They didn't even have a line on the proposed transit north of the Danforth. There was not even a line. So this proposal builds rapid transit up the Danforth all the way to Don Mills Road. And and I'd like to congratulate the mayor for, and I'm going to get back to that in a minute, and staff for coming up with this arrangement, this deal. I think that when this all started, no one thought that we would have such a positive deal, such a good deal. The finance piece is good for the city. For me, as the local councillor, the idea of the Ontario line makes sense for my communities, for Thorncliffe and Flemington. It creates a transit hub at Don Mills Road in Eglinton, and it does it far faster than the city ever contemplated. They actually had no idea when they were going to get up to Don Mills Road. They had no idea when they were going to bring rapid transit to the Flemington community and the Thorncliffe community. And quite frankly, those communities, with any high needs community, with any marginalized community, that opens up the world to them, it opens up the city to them. And from that point of view, this particular proposal is remarkable and deserves this council's support, and I hope everyone will, well, it won't be unanimous, but I hope you'll take that in mind when you're considering the arrangements that have been worked out by our staff and the report that's in front of us today.
Thank you. Councillor Fillion?
Thank you. I have a motion in two parts. The first part is that City Council direct the City Manager in consultation with the Chief Executive Officer, TTC, in the negotiation of the applicable master agreement with the province and/or its agency, include a requirement that the in-service date for the Ontario line be prior to the in-service date of the Yonge North Subway extension as stated in the 2019 provincial budget, and that the relative construction schedules be planned accordingly. The second is that the City Manager report to Council by Q3 2020 on a funding plan for the Line 1 Capacity Enhancement Program, so that funding sources will be secured in order that such enhancements occur prior to the opening of the Line 1 extension. So to deal with the motion first, the first part deals with the overcrowding that we're already familiar with on the on Line 1, that it is standing room only by North York Centre, which is the second stop, that it is crowded by Eglinton, that it is jam-packed at Bloor, and we know that will only get worse until it gets better. So we need to just not have vague assurances. We need to require this in the agreement, and I have worked with the City Manager and Deputy City Manager on these motions. On the other side, the second part really deals with what is uncomfortably becoming perhaps largely our responsibility, which is to make sure that we have the money to do the improvements to Line 1 so that we could handle the additional capacity of extending the line north. And we know that is going to cost us billions of dollars. I think we expect that the other levels of government will join us in that, but even our share, assuming even if we only had to come up with a third, it's still going to be billions of dollars. On the deal itself, in the last debate, I was one of those who said we shouldn't be in discussions with the province, and in fairness to the mayor, and I thank the mayor and all the staff who are involved, it's probably a good thing that we were there, because I think we're in a better spot than we were 6 months ago, and in a better spot than I thought we would be in. So I think, you know, comparing to where we were, we're in a better spot. That's a good thing. I said at the time I thought they just wanted to case the place to see what they should take, and I still think that statement was true. What happened that I didn't anticipate is they cased the place and they decided it wasn't worth taking and decided to leave us with it. So however it happened, you know, it's a good thing we were there at the table to have that discussion and end up in a better spot. How do we evaluate this? Is it a great deal? I don't think so. Is it a good deal? I'm not even sure it's a good deal. It's a better deal, and again, I'm thankful that we have a better deal than what we had. From where we sit right here at this moment, you know, I'm uncomfortable voting either for or against, but my inclination is to vote for, because as of where we sit now, I certainly don't have a better option for us. We don't have much available to us. Yes, we are losing even more control through this deal, but really, with the current government, we really had no control. So, you know, I think from where we sit now, we should support this. from looking ahead, like going 15 years into the future and looking back on this deal, what will we say then? Was it a deal we should have made? And I don't know the answer to that. I hope the answer turns out to be yes. I hope we don't look back on it and say, wow, we should have anticipated this, we should have anticipated that, and we really gave up control and look what happened. And I hope it's not like looking back on the construction of the Shepherd subway and the filling in of the Eglinton line. And I know those weren't, those were, especially the filling in of the Eglinton line was imposed on us, but this is just kind of a gentle imposing on us, and I suppose we have to make the best of a bad situation, but I look forward to a time where we have a provincial government that truly wants to be partners with the city, and we can enthusiastically support something.
Thank you, Councillor Billion. What he said. Councillor Wong Tam.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, Deputy Speaker. I have a motion. I will ask the clerks to put this on the screen. That City Council affirm its support for the maintenance of the new and existing lines to be done by the integrated and professional workforce at the Toronto Transit Commission. This report provides no guarantee that the maintenance will be carried out by the TTC operators as of today. And during my questioning to staff, they were also not able to give us any further assurances than what was already contained in the report. What is troubling about that, of course, is that we know that the efficiency and the safety of the system is going to be absolutely paramount, especially moving forward as we merge new and old technologies. And I do think that it's very important to recognize that in examples around the world where maintenance has been broken off and privatized, they have received worse service and it's cost them a lot more. And despite the underfunding, the chronic underfunding of the Toronto Transit Commission, the skilled workers at the TTC have done an exceptional job of keeping the fleet of vehicles that we have in all forms running, and they will continue to do so, but only if we empower them to do so. We've also got to take a look at a report from the AG, our Auditor General, who specifically talked about the failures of Presto and what happens when you have too many agencies, too many external agencies poking their noses and their fingers in our business. And what we've seen is a spectacular failure of a system that was supposed to be integrated. We talk about fair integration. It's not going to happen if the province continues to put their nose in our business. So contracting out maintenance of the new or existing lines will actually be, for our riders, a detrimental blow to them with what they expect, which is quality of service. I think it's also important for us, Madam Speaker, to recognize that the Ontario line, despite all the backslapping and the high fives that I'm hearing on the floor of council, is that it has no business case. We have no business case for the Ontario line. And we're about to make a decision and send staff further off into this discussion and probably in the quantums of tens of billions of dollars into the future. We have no idea whether or not this is financially viable and whether or not it will float at the end of the day. And to me, that's it's highly irresponsible, Madam Speaker, for us to make such a decision and a commitment right now by even suggesting that we have that information. It is entirely false. We do not. And I don't think, Madam Speaker, that City Council can make an informed decision about a very important infrastructure project when we don't have real information before us. And this lack of transparency, the lack of a business case, is incredibly troubling, because this seems to be the way we're asked to plan transit in the city. And I really wish that we were not put in this position, but here we are once again trying to make lemonade out of lemons. And I'm not interested in leading from behind. I don't think anybody was ever elected to this order of government to represent our communities, to say that if somebody cases out our house and then decides not to steal from it, that we should be joyful. that someone threatened to set our house on fire but then decided not to and put down their box of matches, that we should be gleeful. I cannot imagine how we can actually look into the face of our constituents and say that I've done the very best for you and I stood up for you when we needed to. And it's not about getting to the table, Madam Speaker. It's about working with partners that will respect us and the plans that we have and the studies that we've concluded and the ambitions of the city based on evidence and based on our vision and aspirations for the city. So, Madam Speaker, there are so many questions that have left unanswered, and I cannot believe that we went through a round of questions so rapidly, and I still have more, and I know members do as well, but we're not going to get them because the staff simply don't have them. But yet here we are, asked to make a decision to proceed with something we know is flawed in our gut. We must know that a transit proposal of this magnitude worth this much in quantum without a business case, and we're going to cast a vote for it, based on dubious assumptions, it is the height of irresponsibility. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Carroll.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have two motions. One, that City Council direct the City Manager and Chief Executive Officer, Toronto Transit Commission, as part of the negotiations with the province and/or any other relevant provincial agency, to ensure that the parties set a timeline for negotiating a joint operating subsidy. And B, that City Council requests the City Manager, in consultation with the Chief Executive Officer, Toronto Transit Commission, to report back to Executive Committee on the state of good repair burden at the Toronto Transit Commission, separating out vehicle life cycle needs across subway, streetcar, bus and wheel-trans vehicles, and include assumptions of vehicle purchase programs that are possible at the city's cost under the new terms negotiated with the province. Madam Speaker, I haven't put a timeline to motion B. I think it would be asking for work that's not complete to ask that this be ready in time for the 2020 budget. I mean, it's already being inked. And I also think that we're deep in the negotiations, and so it would kind of hijack a special budget council meeting here in this chamber in January. Immediately after the budget, though, we know we'll get a good, strong 5-year plan on state of good repair. Our capital plan will give us a rock-solid 5 years that don't need to be amended. But they really need to paint a picture. As soon as we get through this budget committee, while we're still getting to the final agreement, they need to paint a picture for this chamber, not just for the commission, but for this chamber, of what is the cost of keeping the base system going. Because it is our burden now if we agree to this. We sound a little like we're sitting here thinking you made a bad deal. I'm painfully aware of the whole table. If there are problems in the way this is coming to us, if there are problems, if there are incomplete things, I'm considering the whole table in that. And so I'm not passing any judgments on anyone in this room right now, unless they've sent someone to listen to our debate and they're sitting behind me. So all I know is this. Once we're back here and we've got our, what is it, 1.24 billion is really all the money that we're getting back, we can't let our eyes be bigger than our stomachs. We have to really know what our costs are of our base capital program in fine detail, and particularly the vehicle purchases. Because at the moment, it sounds like the province is abandoning them. The federal government has already, in their previous term, coughed up a lot through PTIF and PTIF2, and they're now in a minority situation. So we don't know what's coming from them. I hope they work with the side of the House in Ottawa that wants to invest in transit. But we don't know. And so we'd better darn well know what we're responsible for under the terms of this agreement. And motion A, Madam Speaker, in operating, we have had good news from the province before. They change their minds, we change our minds, whatever. We always say, from 1995, when the province walked away from funding operating, when they walked away from the Bill Davis formula that we know worked for funding transit on the operating side, so that you could expand while keeping your base system afloat. And from the time we walked away from that, successive premiers keep saying, yeah, that was a bad idea. We'll talk about operating. Let's build this shiny new thing. We really should have that operating conversation one of these days. What I'm asking is that as part of this negotiation, we ensure that we've set a date. I want there to be a date in City Manager Chris Murray's diary that says, on March 1st, the whatever, is the day that I phone the Premier's office and say, it's time to have the operating conversation. We agreed. Today's the day we start that conversation. It will end up being a negotiation, just the same as the negotiation we're having over building new lines. But there has to be a day that it starts. Like a labor negotiation, it has to have a deadline. So let's set one as part of these negotiations. I don't care if it's 12 months from now, 36 months from now. There needs to be a date at the city in our diary that says today's the day we open that conversation. I've shown this to the mayor, I've shown this to the city manager, and they agree with me. We got to nail that down this time. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Councillor Karygiannis.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I do have a motion. If staff can put it up, I'll appreciate it. Basically, the motion asks for that we have the city manager communicate to the province and the federal government that in future stages, when they're doing transit planning, we strongly consider extending the current Shepherd subway to connect with a new proposed station at Shepherd Avenue to McCowan to identify this in their upcoming budgets processes. Madam Speaker, we are experiencing a boom in housing along Shepherd, east and west, and one of the things that we must do in order to make sure that our people are moving, we need to extend the subway along Shepherd. I realize that in Scarborough for the last 40 years, since 1978, we have not built an inch of subway, and we keep talking about it. It's about time that we stop talking about it. It's about time that we engage our constituents, especially the people north of 401 that have been forgotten. There's article after article that's been written that says the forgotten people of north of 401, and make sure that they deserve and they have the same kind of transportation that the rest of the city has. We're building a subway up to Vaughan. For the life of me, we're spending our money. I don't know why. Yeah, my people some say they're coming to work downtown. They're coming to work downtown, getting paid, and going back up to Vaughan. They're just as citizens as much as we are, but the City of Toronto and its citizens, and these are the people that live north of the 401 in Scarborough, deserve nothing less but a subway that goes the three-stop subway along the Scarborough subway and along the Shepherd subway to connect it. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Councillor McKelvey.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I want to start by thanking city staff for looking out for the best interests of the City of Toronto during this negotiation, and also thank Mayor Tory for being extremely pragmatic at a time where it would be very easy for him to have been political. Scarborough needs an integrated transit network that relies on the Scarborough subway extension, the Eglinton East LRT to Malvern, and rapid transit on Shepherd. Today's agreement is a good deal for Scarborough as it takes the next step towards this transit network. It commits the province to funding of the Scarborough subway extension, and it frees up the city commitments to that project. $1.23 billion is being collected through a dedicated tax levy and development charges. These funds were collected with Scarborough Transit in mind, and I will advocate that these funds are spent on Scarborough Transit, specifically the Eglinton East LRT to Malvern. But I appreciate that that's a debate for next year. But what I'd like to draw your attention to is the letters of support we have received supporting the three-stop Scarborough subway and the Eglinton East LRT to Malvern. There are letters included in the package from 3 major employers and anchor institutions in Scarborough: the Scarborough Hospital Network, the University of Toronto Scarborough Campus, and Centennial College. Collectively, they represent 15,000 staff, 35,000 students, and over 500,000 patients. There's also letters from the Scarborough Business Association and Renew Scarborough that speak to the economic development and housing that can happen with higher order transit in Scarborough. There's also letters of support from 3 local community associations in Eastern Scarborough: the Centennial, Highland Creek, and West Rouge community associations. They all indicate their support for the Scarborough Subway and the Eglinton East LRT to Malvern. But I recognize that through this agreement, we need to demonstrate credible progress towards our state of good repair backlog, even though we're not totally sure what the definition of that means right now. I look forward to continued discussions with other levels of government so that we can find the funding that we need to make the Eglinton East LRT happen.
Thank you. Councillor Bailao.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I think more than half of council has already spoken. At least, there's not many of us. And I think there was probably just one person that really talked about the big issue that started this discussion, which was the upload. And I've seen this discussion out there characterized as the upload is no longer happening because in exchange for the Ontario line approval, or the upload is no longer a big deal. It was big, but it's no longer a big deal. The reality is that about a year ago, we were facing the upload, and many people said we should not be at the table, and the table proved to be right. And what I heard from our city manager and from legal department as well is that there was no real in exchange. The Ontario line has been legislated. The Ontario line work is going to proceed. Either we're going to be, once again, at the table or not. And actually, we wouldn't even be able to continue our work because it would be against the law to continue our work. So I think that what is in front of us is a victory in the sense that we continue to own and to operate our TTC. We do have a major capital investment, and we have funds that we're going to be able to use in much needed upkeep and to address the backlog. Now, are there issues with some of these things that are in front of us? I have no question that there are. And I think that is why it's so important that we continue these conversations, that we continue to be at the table to make sure that many of the issues, and I sympathize with Councillor Fletcher, for example. There's many of us that have the same issues in our communities, and that these are issues that we need to ensure that as these lines are developed in our city, that these issues are being put forward. That as these lines are being connected with our existing TTC, that the needs of the existing system, the sustainability of our existing system is brought to the table. And that is why it is important that we continue the conversations in a pragmatic way and to ensure that transit is built. And for that, I want to thank our city staff for the work that they've done and thank the leadership of the mayor that from day one said, we need to be on the table, we will continue to be at the table. And so I'm happy that we're there. Now let's get this transit built.
Thank you. Councillor Lai.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. First of all, I'd like to echo all my colleagues here to thank the city staff, especially the city manager. And Mr. City Manager, I think you must be very likable because when you're at the table, people like you, they'll do what you ask for. So please remain likable so that we can get more we can get. And for Mr. Mayor, I really, really congratulate you on your negotiation because it's not easy to get a deal. For me, I don't know whether there's a Ford plan or the Tory plan. I only know one plan because I'm new on this council, and I really think that this is a very massive plan that we are planning that that is the least cost to the city. A subway plan that is with the least cost to the city, and I think we should not pass. And we talk and talk and talk. There's no perfect plan. Let's get the shovel on the ground. And we can talk, but we need to walk. So I was always telling this story about in the 70s, there was no subway in Hong Kong when I came. But 40 years later, at that time in the 70s, when I came, there was subway up to Eglinton and up to Islington and up to Kennett or Warden. So basically, you can see the number of subway stops that we built, the number of subways that we built, comparing to that of Hong Kong now is like the whole web. So we have a lot of catch-up to play. And really, I would have loved to have my Shepherd extension line to be on this plan, but it wasn't on the plan. But the thing is, we need to walk together, we need to work together so that we can get things done together. So we shouldn't be debating too long. I think we should actually get the shovel on the ground, and we need to be also to be a team player so that we can get things in the best interest of the residents of Toronto. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ford.
Well, thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and I too would like to put my thanks towards our exceptional, hardworking city staff who have kind of been inundated this year with transit, and I think they have done a phenomenal job in moments that had very divisive debate in this chamber and in public discourse. I too also want to echo my colleagues in thanking the mayor for his leadership, and I think he has had a very steady hand at the helm of the ship and really pushing us to stay at the table when some of my colleagues, I should say, not many, but some of my colleagues in here wanted to walk away. And if we walked away and we took their advice at those moments, we would not be here. And I think what is before us is one of the largest transit investments in Canadian history is sitting in front of us. And it is $28.5 billion in new urban transit that I think is phenomenal for many of communities and many people in our city, people who want to come and invest in our city to create jobs, people who want to come into Toronto and visit our city. I think it is a well-rounded investment that is showing support from all three levels of government. And just putting my voice behind thanking the provincial government most of all on starting this conversation and ending up with a huge step forward to seeing transit built for millions of people in Toronto and moving the ball forward. Before closing my remarks, the only thing that I would like to put on the floor of council is more of a local issue around the Eglinton West LRT and wanting to see that progress because there are hundreds of thousands of people in Etobicoke who want to see that transit. And of course, the greater connection to Toronto Pearson International Airport, which is a huge economic pillar for our city. So I think that is a big part of getting transit moving and look forward to continuing those talks, which I'm sure will happen throughout the course of the term on seeing transit move on Eglinton. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Councillor Perks.
Thank you, Speaker. I have a motion. I move that City Council amend the Executive Committee Recommendation 3 by inserting and an agreement which requires the provincial and federal governments to pay 2/3 of the Toronto Transit Commission state of good repair and rolling stock costs. We've been had. We've been completely swindled. We've had our pockets picked. We've been tricked. We've been fooled. Since about 1995, the City of Toronto, every year in its budget debate, sends a letter to the province of Ontario and says, we cannot afford to run the system we have. You have to help us now. And the province of Ontario got sick of that eventually. They gave us some money along the way, which I'll talk about in a moment, but they eventually got sick of it. And if you'll recall, about 2 years ago, the Progressive Conservative Party of Ontario said, we know how to solve this problem. We will upload the TTC so that we can better finance the state of good repair using our vast borrowing powers, which the City of Toronto does not have. And that's how we wound up with the upload conversation. The upload conversation was never just an empty threat. It was a way for the province to get away from the fact that this is the only major city in North America or Europe that does not have sustained capital funding. We're the only one. And here we are with an agreement in front of us that, as Mr. Leary pointed out, frees up $1 billion of $24 billion that we need just to maintain the system we have. That's 5%. The agreement that you have lets the province off the hook and leaves us with 95% of our state of good repair and rolling stock needs unfunded. It is literally the worst transit deal that has ever been put in front of this council. It is utterly shocking to me that any of you would consider this. Beyond that, you've heard that once we vote yes today, it will be at the sole discretion of the province of Ontario how to plan and design these new lines. We will have given away our ability to do anything about that. Now, some have suggested, the province has always been hard on us and we've never been able to conclude a deal. Well, I want to remind you that sitting in front of me is a budget chief, or former budget chief, who was able to get $100 million 2 years in a row, who was able to get the GST for transit, who was able to get the gas tax for transit, who was able to get the land transfer tax, which is the only reason we've been able to operate our transit system, and who was able to get the federal government to help us buy 800 buses, and who was able to get the federal and provincial governments to help us buy 204 streetcars. If we would just remember this simple principle, that you can't add a story on top of a building whose foundations are crumbling, we would never sign a deal like this. We would say the first job is to maintain the system you have. That's the question I have asked the CEO of the TTC every time we have debated transit. I have said, what is job one? And every single time he has said, the state of good repair. If you build the Ontario line and you can't afford to run line 2, what do the people who are getting off the Ontario line connect to? Nothing. If you are extending the subway out east and you have no money to buy buses, how do people get to these new stops? If the Yonge line continues to crumble, what on earth is the point of having a discussion about where the Ontario line terminus is? This is all just fantasy. You're chasing chimera. It is ridiculous. We have lost the plot. And because we lost the plot, Premier Ford picked our pocket. The only person who walks away with a benefit out of this is Premier Ford. You know how you spell transit failure in Toronto? F-O-R-D.
Councillor Bradford.
Thanks very much, Madam Speaker. I'd like to start by thanking city staff. I'd like to thank our city manager and his team, our chief planner, director of transportation planning, and the mayor for really putting us in a positive direction and taking what was largely a negative situation, and over the past number of months and dozens of meetings, greatly improving that. And despite the rhetoric that we just heard, I'm going to try and be a little bit more pragmatic about what's in front of us. I think it's been a tough transit dynamic in the province of Ontario. I think we can all agree on that over the past 12 months. And as colleagues have mentioned, literally with the stroke of the pen, Bill 107 completely changed our transit paradigm. The City of Toronto is no longer permitted to plan transit expansion on these key priorities. That's the reality. But we're in a much better position today because of the mayor's leadership, because of city staff, and because cooler heads prevailed. We sent our team to the table to advance Toronto's interests in a very challenging environment. To ignore the achievements that have come out of those negotiations is irresponsible. Now, I think that we all still have a lot of questions remain, and as we heard from our staff, that's pretty typical. That's pretty typical of linear transit projects that are cutting across the city and many stable neighborhoods in a very challenging urban environment. That information is going to come forward through a detailed design process. That's what you get in a stage gating process. That's what you get with transit projects in North America. That information isn't presented to you on day one. staff teams, engineers, consultants work and build that information. And then as politicians, as staff, we have an opportunity to review that. Same with cost class estimates. That is what is going to come forward of this. And that's a typical process. So has the process been very challenging to date? Yes. You know, leaking business cases and documents Friday afternoon, that's regrettable. That's not helpful. But where we are today, because of the work and because we've been at the table, we're in a much better position. We're actually here to make decisions. That's our job. We're here to make decisions. And that's what we're going to do. We need to look at the facts. We need to look at the legislation that literally governs what we're doing as a municipality. We need to look at that. And then we need to decide how we move forward. For Torontonians, for TTC riders, and for everybody in this city, how do we move forward on the transit file? Now, there's 18 motions in front of us. I think it's 18. And some of them are going to completely undermine the work that's been done today. Some of them are fine. Some of them are additive and benefit. Some of them jeopardize the terms that our city manager and staff have worked out in all of those meetings. And unfortunately, this is politics. This is the politics of transit that has failed Torontonians time and time again. It didn't take long for us to start talking about Transit City again. Great plan. It was a really great plan. It's not getting built. I'm sorry, that wasn't my decision as a new councillor, but that's not happening, and I don't think it's helpful. It also doesn't help to talk about the delays. I mean, there will be delays, and show me a transit project in North America where it hasn't been over time and over budget. Like, that is the reality of these large infrastructure projects, and it's unfortunate. But I also think blowing up an agreement that's been worked out over the past year and then starting over again, you know, that will further delay us. And the other option of not doing anything for the next 3 years and hoping that there's a change in government, that doesn't sound very responsible to me either. So I want to find a way where we can all move forward, and I think that's the original agreement that we have in front of us. There are a lot of valid concerns that need to be addressed. And anytime you bring in major transit infrastructure into dense, stable urban neighborhoods, there's going to be challenges. It doesn't matter if it's undergrade, at grade, or above grade, that is going to be painful. And it's going to be painful for the foreseeable future here in this city because we haven't done it over the previous decades. It's only going to get harder. But the best way to mitigate those impacts is by being at the table, sending our staff there to negotiate for our interests, to advocate for city building priorities, and to shape that process. And that's what I think we should do. So I want to focus on how we're advancing transit in this city and what we can do today to build the transit for tomorrow. I think that there's some recommendations and some motions here that are thoughtful. Again, there are some that are going to undermine the work that's been done to date, but would appreciate you supporting the agreement that was worked out by staff. I think that's the best, most pragmatic way forward. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Councillor Holyday.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just want to briefly rise to acknowledge the great work done by the team on city staff. This is a really exciting time because what we're talking about is a regional transit plan. And I think we tend to be Toronto focused, but there's a couple elements in this plan that are extending beyond the city. And there's the Ontario line, which is going to do a lot of things, but it's also going to do some capacity increases that will help serve our neighbors outside the city. And that's a good thing, especially for me that represents an area on the edge of the 905 to the 416 border. That means that maybe more people from those areas, instead of driving through our city to get to their place of work or where they're going to visit, might choose transit because it goes right to them. But I listened to the council debate today, and it's amazing the amount of doubt that's cast into this process. You know, I think about the time I go with my kids to the movie theater, 3 kids, little kids, and they argue and they fight, you know, I want to see this movie, I want to see that movie, and this one's no good, and that one's bad, that one's R-rated, we can't see that. And there's one way that I solve the discussion really fast. I pull out my credit card and I say, I'm the one paying for it. I'm calling the shots, I'm picking the movie. You know, this is important. This is how much we're paying. Zero. That's what we're contributing to the capital. And there was this attack just a little while ago about, you know, how bad this is. It means we can take $6 billion we were otherwise going to use to build infrastructure and put it into state of good repair. I don't know how else we could possibly do that, other than to, and if you read the report, we're not being asked for much other than consent to have a federal grant directed towards this project. And you overlay the Ontario line, it almost completely overlays where the other subway was. I know it's out by a few hundred meters in a few spots, but it overlays it and then goes longer. So I went through this report, I listened to the debates, I went through the presentations. I'll tell you, I mean, maybe I've been here too long, it's cynical. I was looking for something to find fault in, but it was awfully hard. I think this is a fantastic deal for Toronto. I think this is fantastic that the government is going to come and build this infrastructure. I think it's fantastic that it's regional in nature. I have every faith in our staff who've got some experience dealing with the Eglinton Crosstown, that they're going to find a way to do this faster and better. I hope to cooperate with the Ontario government to get this delivered as fast as possible, because at the end of the day, it's about the transit riders. It's about inviting people to the system, getting them from A to B in an efficient manner. I'm also delighted to say, after a long, long push, the light is at the end of the tunnel, or there's a tunnel underneath the ground for the Eglinton West LRT. Councillor Ford mentioned it. I would be remiss in not mentioning it. That is something that is extremely important to the community that I represent. We want to make sure that the transit investments are enhancing our neighborhoods. They're taking into account the needs of the local residents. We're not just a pass-through. We are people that enjoy transit, that use transit, that need transit, but we also rely on a road system that works. And I think the government's commitment to doing that is a portion of this plan that isn't talked about enough. So I really hope that Council supports this. There's some poison motions in here that I'm concerned with that look to basically plan some more before agreeing to consenting to have a federal grant go forward. So there's the irony of it, right? The criticism of, you know, this is going to set back the clock and take more time. But the motions here say, let's go back and discuss this some more before we agree to move forward. Anyways, sometimes you see ironic things in the chamber. But this is a day that I'm going to reflect on in my time at City Council. I think this is great for the city, and this is a big transformation that's about to happen. Thank you.
Thank you. There's no motion, Councillor Gull. A clarification what? There was no motion. Councillor Cressy.
Well, thank you, Speaker. And let me begin by placing an amendment, which is to direct the Deputy City Manager in consultation with the CEO of the TTC to ensure, as part of the discussions, that fair integration is incorporated. Let me begin, first of all, by thanking our city staff for their hard work, really hard work under challenging circumstances, and they went out and did a solid job, and I want to thank them for that. In 10 years of transit debates that I've watched at City Hall, the lesson that I've learned, and I've said it before, is that it's very easy to announce transit. We have announcements every year about new transit, but it's very hard to actually build transit. And so with the proposal in front of us, I'd like to share a few thoughts on what I see as the positives, what I see as the negatives, and what I see as the unknowns, the good, the bad, and the unknown. And I'll tell you where I've landed as a result. As a starting point, when it comes to the positives, there are positives. I will acknowledge that. The upload is off the table. Whether it was a bad idea to begin with, frankly, it's off the table. And that's a good thing. And I think that a great deal of credit for that rests with city staff who did their hard work and this chamber and Mayor Tory. There are new provincial dollars committed to transit expansion. That is a good thing. In doing so, the province is taking on risk associated with those new transit expansion projects. That is a good thing. And if this does result in relief for Line 1, if it does, especially for some of the neighborhoods north of the Danforth, many of the underserved neighborhoods north of the Danforth, that is a very good thing. So those are good, positive benefits in front of us. Now, are those benefits the result of us sitting at the table, or are they a result of a new desire from the provincial government to reset the relationship with us as a result of our collective fight? I think it's probably a bit of both. And so there's credit all around on that. So those are good things. Are there bad components of this proposal? There are. If you live in Scarborough, your much-needed transit is going to be further delayed. In 9 years in Scarborough, we have gone, and let's go through it. In 9 years, just 9 years, from a 7-stop LRT to a 3-stop subway to a 7-stop LRT to a 3-stop subway to a 1-stop subway plus a 14-stop LRT to a 1-stop subway, now back to a 3-stop subway. That's 9 years. Nothing has been built. Nothing. Meanwhile, we have gone through all of those changes. And every time we've changed transit, we've said we're bringing transit to Scarborough, only further delaying transit to Scarborough. And so this deal will further delay, and given that we're in early designs, by the time we have more details, probably result in further delays and changes to transit in Scarborough. Now, the unknowns. When it comes to the Ontario line, there are a great deal of unknowns at this point. There are unknowns related to the alignment, to the depth of lines and the geotechnical analysis, to the way in which we're going to maintain this system, to fair integration. And given the fact that we actually don't have any design work yet for the Ontario line, we are at 0 to 10% design, which means we have lines on a map. I think there is a risk that a year from now, after design work has been done, we'll be back discussing changes to the Ontario line based on cost escalations. That's a very real risk. So those are the unknowns. So that's, as I see it, the good, the bad, and the unknown. So where does that leave us? Well, for me, the conclusion I've reached is that we have a tough decision. Do we support yet another new deal for transit that has clear benefits, but will likely result in further delays and likely changes? So do we support that, or do we risk another standoff with the province and risk 3 years of nothing happening? Those are the two choices. And so for me, where I have landed is that with this government, given what's in front of us, that we should and will continue to advocate for improvements and changes. But I feel that I have no choice but to support the deal in front of me. And so if there's an overarching lesson to that for me, given the 9 years of endless transit changes, it's that enough with the tradition of a new transit plan after every election. That's the lesson, is that what we should do as 3 levels of government is take the experts' advice in where to build transit, and as 3 levels of government, we fund it. And we fund the repairs needed and the expansion needed. But enough with the new announcements and new deals every year and every election. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. The next speaker who would not dream of calling the question before the Speaker and Mr. Mayor is Councillor Grimes.
Thank you. Thank you, Deputy Speaker Carroll. I'll start off by saying I think a lot of people have got up here today and started thanking the mayor and staff. I think that's a good indication where we're at and the place we're in. So I will thank the mayor for his leadership on this. I've had many conversations on it with him, and Chris Murray and your team, TTC. We got a great team sitting up here answering these questions. But I think everyone's got up and kind of thanked the mayor for his leadership and staff. So I think that really puts us in this ring in a good place. So I'm in a good place. $30 billion, close to $30 billion, unprecedented amount of money coming from the provincial government. I want to thank them for their investment. But, you know, 45 years of inactivity on this transit file, people don't care. I think Councillor Ford mentioned, people don't care who's building it now. They want to see us working together and getting this built. It's been 45 years of inactivity on this file. And $30 billion investment, and our staff working with their staff. I think there's been too many hands in the pies over the last few years on transit planning, but people don't care. You just go see Mr. Linton over there and say, how many applications do we have in the hopper right now? And every meeting I'm going to, these meetings, we're going to approve the secondary plan for Sherway today. We've done the one for Mimico over the last few years. We've got another one coming to Christie Lands. People don't care. They want to get out of their cars. They want transit at their front door, and they want it built. And I can tell you, the amount of density we're putting in this city is unprecedented, and people don't care. They want to see it built. So, again, I just want to thank staff. I hate to see where we are when some of these members of council said, no, let's just walk away and leave. Where would we be today? But there's been a lot of great work done up here in the front of the room, and I look forward to seeing this thing get built in the next 10 years, hopefully, we'll be working on the next one. We'll start, as Councillor Hawley said, maybe looking at the west end of the city. I keep reminding the mayor, we need some transit out there, but this will be great for Scarborough and great for the city. So I'll be supporting this so wholeheartedly today. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Grimes. Speaker Nunziata is next.
Thank you very much. I would also like to thank staff in the mayor's office. Now, we've been debating transit for over 30 years. Well, for me, it's been a little over 30. Goes back when the Eglinton subway was canceled. And then when David Miller was mayor, he brought forward Transit City, and I remember being in this council chambers where I pleaded with council, please, Transit City would have expropriated 45 homes at Eglinton and Western Road. Nobody cared, they voted for it. And fortunately, that didn't happen. We're getting it tunneled at Eglinton and Western Road. A few months ago, we heard from members of council and protesters outside and inside against the uploading that was announced by the province. So what we did, we moved a motion that we asked staff, because that was a priority for council, to sit down at the table with the province and negotiate a deal. So the deal is here. Maybe not everyone likes the deal, but we instructed staff to negotiate a deal that's best for the city of Toronto. And I believe that this deal that's been negotiated is in the best city of the residents of Toronto. And it was mentioned, it may not be perfect, but we're going to get transit built. The main thing for me is let's get transit built and stop debating. I'm sick of it. Let's start building.
Thank you, Councillor Nunziata. Councillor Perruzza? Councillor Perruzza, are you ready?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Or as ready as I'll ever be, Speaker. So I have a motion which I'd like to move and which I'm hoping people will support, and it's self-explanatory. Speaker, I don't profess to be the smartest guy in the room on this one.
No, but you are.
No, I'm not.
On favor?
And I will be the first, and I will be the first to admit that. But here's what I'm looking at. The provincial government that has said quite clearly it wants to, let's call it invest, $30 billion, mostly in the city of Toronto, except for a little bit that extends into York Region, Richmond Hill. Let me say that again. The provincial government is saying that it wants to invest or spend of their money $30 billion in the city of Toronto. I guess when you think about that a little bit and you let that number sink in, it is absolutely staggering. It's staggering the amount of money that they have said they would like to spend in the city of Toronto. That has all kinds of repercussions. There's economic benefits, there's jobs, there's infrastructures, there's transit, there's growth, there's regeneration, there's added taxes, there's all kinds of stuff attached to all of that. $30 billion. You know, what's mind-numbing is that they're going to let it rip that far, that hard, that fast. That they're even saying it. Irrespective of maybe never spending it. Just saying it is absolutely staggering. That they would let it rip that far. So some people here are saying, and by the way, they're about to lose their minds and spend this much money in the city of Toronto. We shouldn't accept it. Imagine that. We should sit back and say, oh, you know what, we're not going to be able to handle it, we're not going to be able to pay for it, we're not going to be able to manage it, we're not going to be able to grow it, we're not going to be able to do this and that and the other. To even suggest that. I don't profess to be the smartest guy in the room, right? But that doesn't sound to me like the smartest position in the room either. Should we welcome this? I think our staff and the mayor have done an absolutely amazing thing. However that came about. To think that we would get that kind of investment here. So what we should be turning our minds to is, how quickly can we get it in? How quickly can we get it into the ground before something untoward happens to that? That's what we should be turning our minds to. That's what we should be focused on. Tunnel it up fast. Get going with it. Move the people along as quick as you can. This didn't start off being that way. It started off when they first announced that they wanted us to pay 1/3, the federal government to pay 1/3, all kinds of other machinations connected to it. I've had the benefit of having been around on this file for a long, long time. I was at the province when we built the first extension from Wilson to Downsview Station. Did it in a year and a half. Record time. $25 million savings at the end of it. Why? We were in the middle of a recession. Nothing but people power around to power it up. But when you have competing agendas, that's when you get all tripped out. I have a really good story. It's too bad I don't have the time to tell you. I think that this is good. I think we should just proceed with it. Thank you so much.
Okay, we do have a question for you. Councillor Cole, clarification of the motion.
Yeah, just a clarification. In your motion, you seem to imply, as Councillor Halliday did, that this is not our money, that the City of Toronto should welcome it because we're not paying for it. Don't we pay for this through our income tax, corporate tax, sales tax? I mean, we must support the whole country with the taxes we pay in Toronto and what we pay into the province. So isn't it like our money, whether it's the province allocating it or not?
This is true. I mean, we pay towards it, but they could always spend it in Wawa. And then if we spend it in Wawa, we're going to pay for it anyways, but it just goes to Wawa. Better to get it here.
Shouldn't we have a say of where they spend our money, which is our money we pay in taxes every day?
Councillor Cole.
You know what? I think
it's clarification of his motion.
Yeah,
that's what I'm asking for.
No, but that's not clarification.
I personally think we
He's
should
the
have
smartest guy in the room, so I'm asking him for
Well,
No, not at all. I personally think
Okay, thank you.
we should have a say in everything, Speaker, if I can answer that question. However, they are the provincial government, and sometimes they trump us. And in this case, they want to give us a great deal of money to create a great many jobs, a lot of economic regeneration. No, of course, it's our money. In the same way that it was our money when the former provincial government wanted to give us $8.9 billion, and then they cut it back to $8.4 for Transit City, and we spent some of that money. It's regrettable we didn't spend the rest of it. Because we kind of dragged our feet with that one. But
Thank you, Councillor Perusa.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that's it for the speakers. Our last speaker is Mayor Tory.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I don't want to give short shrift to either of these things, but I will just say at the outset, I said quite a few words of gratitude to our staff, including our city manager, Mr. Fragg, and Mr. Leary and others the other day, and those words stand and can only be amplified. I also want to just note that I will be voting against Councillor Matlow's motions as they, I think, try to put us into a time machine and take us back in time to a time that has long since passed. I'll be voting no to Councillor Layton's motions A and D, and I'll be voting no to Councillor Perk's motion. He said this is the worst plan ever, and it's difficult for me to compare it to any plans he has brought forward to this council for transit because there haven't been any. But I'll vote against that motion. Councillor Carroll said during the debate, Madam Speaker, that there's a lot more to do. And she's right. There's a lot more to do. This is not the end. This is a very significant beginning. But acknowledging that as I do, I think this agreement, painstakingly negotiated by professional public servants, countering professional public servants on the province's side, gives us what I would call a once-in-a-lifetime chance to do a number of things. First, to get a good start on getting transit fixed on the state of good repair faster than otherwise would have been the case. And we've left out of the discussion largely during this debate this afternoon the fact that we had put some money aside in our own 10-year plan to have us get a solid start on that, and now we're going to get a more solid start on that. Secondly, to get transit expanded, not at our expense, but we get to operate it. And the $30 billion number is the right number. There is $30 billion of transit that is going to be built, not with city taxpayers' money per se. It's true what Councillor Cole said. It's all taxpayers' money, but it's not property tax money, as it were. Thirdly, to give us the financial latitude to pursue the state of good repair, but also other priority projects like the Eglinton East LRT and the waterfront transit. Fourthly, to get transit, and this was overlooked quite a bit today, get transit to 2 underserved communities, dramatically underserved communities, Thorncliffe Park and Flemington Park, a lot sooner than otherwise would have been the case. To get relief for the Yonge Street subway line, a lot sooner than otherwise would have been the case. And at the same time, we maintain ownership of our subway. I remember being in this room and having people, some of the same people, get up and say that this uploading thing was the worst ever. It was the worst disaster ever. People were practically lighting their hair on fire about that. And I agreed it was a very bad thing. It was a negative development for us. And we have now succeeded in maintaining the ownership of our existing subway system. And we have a couple of commitments we've never had before, one of which is to go with the province jointly to see the federal government about an ongoing role in state of good repair and capital upkeep. And the second is a commitment to extract from the other cities to which these expansion lines run a contribution to operating costs. And I would point out deals made long before I was here on the TYSSE and so on. We pick up the entire tab. And there were people here who voted for that who've said today this is a bad thing because we didn't get, as yet, an operating contribution, but we're going to get some. And I just would say to you, with respect, Madam Speaker, compare this to where we were a year ago today. The upload was underway. Legislative steps had been taken to make it happen. Arbitrary legislative determination of exactly what transit projects would happen was underway. And worse than that, in a way, they were saying that we were going to have to pay a third of the cost of that. So a big chunk of that $30 billion was going to come from us. There was no prospect beyond the amount already in the 10-year capital plan to help us finance the state of good repair, which is an important priority. And people I could name in this chamber, Madam Speaker, a couple in particular, said we should just stomp our feet, we should bang our shoe on the table and tell the provincial government to stuff it. Well, Councillor Layton was right today when he said there were 2 alternatives. There were 2 alternatives. One is to go and talk to them and come away with the best deal that we could, and I think it's a good deal, and the other was fighting. And that's what he said the choice was, and he was right. That was the choice. Well, I'm for building, not for fighting. And I mean, these negotiations were not easy. There were times when we had to say that we may just not be able to get a deal and we might have to walk away from the table. And I would point out to you the discussions continued even at the worst hour of the budget confrontation that we had with the province, but they continued nonetheless. And they ended up in a place where we get the benefits that I've talked about today, and I think the alternative would have been exactly what Councillor Layton said, an endless continuation of the transit fights, during which one thing is certain, that the losers would have been the people of the City of Toronto, the transit riders, present and future, and that no transit of any substance would have been built during that period of time because we'd have all been so busy fighting. And I don't think the people want that. I think they want us and they expect us to work together to get transit built. And I think this deal is entirely defensible. It is better than that. And I am not for endless fighting. I'm for working together. I'm for working together with the other governments to get things done. And you now have an alignment that I described today as what I believe it is, a once-in-a-lifetime chance with the 3 governments aligned to get this transit actually built. And so I will fight the good fight for as long as it takes to try to get the provincial government to own up to what it should do and make a contribution to our operating expenditures. Of course, we'll continue with that. But in the meantime, I don't think we can stand still and just say we're going to keep fighting. We've got to make a deal. We're going to make a deal. If you approve this, we're going to move forward. We're going to get the transit built. And I think the City of Toronto will be way better off as a result of what we've done, especially when you go back and compare it to where we were 1 year ago today. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you. Okay, we'll have a 5-minute recess so all the motions could be brought together. Okay, members of council ready? Okay. So our first motion is 1A. We'll put that on the screen. Okay, recorded vote.
Councillor Layton, Councillor Bradford, and Councillor Karygiannis, please.
Councillor Perruzza. Councillor Carroll, please. Deputy Mayor Min Wong. Councillor Fillion and Councillor Wong Tam, please.
Councillor Bradford, please.
Councillor Carroll, please. Thank you.
Motion 1A does not carry. The vote is 8 to 17.
Okay, our next one is, oh, okay. 2A. Okay. Okay, recorded vote.
Councillor Perruzza, please. And Councillor Cole, when you're seated.
Councillor Ainsley, please.
Motion 2A does not carry. The vote is 8 to 17.
Motion 10. Recorded vote.
Councillor Perruzza, please.
Motion 10 does not carry. The vote is 8 to 17.
2B. Recorded vote.
Councillor Grimes, please.
Motion 2B carries 24 to 1.
Motion 1B. Recorded vote.
Councillor Matlow, please, and Councillor Fletcher.
Councillor Fillion, thank you. Councillor Carroll and Councillor Perruzza, please.
Motion 2B does not carry. The vote is 5 to 20. Sorry, 1B.
Motion 1C, recorded vote. We are.
Counselor Carroll, please. Counselor Carroll, please.
Motion 1C does not carry. The vote is 7 to 18.
Motion 2C. Recorded vote.
Counselor Bailao, please.
Counselor Perruzza, please.
Motion 2C carries unanimously, 25 in favor.
Motion 2D. Recorded vote.
Counselor Bradford, please.
Motion 2D does not carry. The vote is 7 to 18.
Three A. Recorded vote.
Counselor Wong Tam, Deputy Mayor Min Wong, and Counselor Perruzza, please.
Motion 3A carries 23 to 2.
Three B. Recorded vote.
Three B carries 24 to 1.
Three C. Recorded vote.
Counselor Cole and Counselor Perruzza, thank you.
Motion 3C carries 24 to 1.
Motion 4 of Part 3. Recorded vote.
Counselor Thompson, please.
Counselor Grimes, Counselor Pasternak, and Counselor Perruzza, please.
Part 3 of motion 4 carries unanimously, 25 in favor.
Motion 5, recorded vote.
Counselor Matlow, please. Counselor Bradford.
Counselor Perruzza and Counselor Pasternak, please. Thank you.
Motion 5 carries 24 to 1.
Sorry, Speaker, I voted incorrectly on that.
Okay, can we have, to reopen, all in favor, carried, so let's revote. Recorded vote.
Counselor Wong Tam, please.
Counselor Bailao, please.
Motion 5 carries unanimously, 25 in favor.
Motion 6, recorded vote.
Counselor Fletcher, please.
Counselor Perruzza, Counselor Crawford, and Counselor Pasternak, please.
Motion 6 carries unanimously, 25 in favor.
Motion 7, recorded vote.
Counselor Cole, please.
Motion 7 carries 23 to 2.
Motion 8A, recorded vote.
Counselor Crawford, thank you. Counselor Pasternak.
Motion 8A carries unanimously, 25 in favor.
Motion 8B, recorded vote.
Deputy Mayor Min Wong, please. Thank you. And Counselor Wong Tam.
Counselor Matlow.
Thank you.
Motion 8B carries unanimously, 25 in favor.
Motion 9, recorded vote.
Counselor Wong Tam, Counselor Filion, Counselor Cole, thank you, Counselor Carroll, and Counselor Perruzza.
Motion 9 carries 17 to 8.
Motion 10, recorded vote. Oh, sorry. Motion 11, yeah, sorry. Motion 11, recorded vote.
Counselor Matlow, please.
Counselor Wong Tam, please.
Motion 11 carries 24 to 1.
Motion 12. Okay, motion 12.
Motion 12 carries 24 to 1.
Item as amended, recorded vote.
Counselor Bailao, please.
Counselor Pasternak, please, thank you.
The item is amended carries 22 to 3.
Okay. All right. So we'll now go to the mayor's second key item, which is on page 3, EX 9.2, citywide real estate strategy. Do we have any questions? Okay, we're on page 2. The mayor's second key item. Nobody? Okay, does anybody want to speak? No? Okay, on the item. Recorded vote.
Counselor Perruzza, please. Counselor Carroll. Deputy Mayor Min Wong. And Counselor Wong Tam, please.
The item is adopted unanimously, 24 in favor.
Okay, we'll go to the top of the page, page 3. If I can have members of council attention, please. Okay, we're at the top, we're on page 3, NY 8.3, final report zoning bylaw amendment for 1299 Don Mills Road. Deputy Mayor Min Wong, you held the item down. Do you have questions?
Madam Chair, as I said when I held both items down, there's a report expected tomorrow morning from
Oh, okay, I'm
Planning
sorry.
Department. And so if you indulge,
Yeah,
Oh,
I'm
it's-
sorry,
it's-
I
It has been
forgot.
distributed? Oh, well, if you can hold it down, I haven't seen it yet, and then I'll look at it. Oh, here it is. Thank you.
So you still want to hold it down?
Well, I'd like to look at it if you don't mind.
Okay. Yeah, we're going to hold both items down then. Okay, so EX 9.4, if we can deal with it tomorrow? Page 4, Counselor Bailao. EX 9.5. Do you have questions?
I got them answered offline, so I'm able to release. Yeah. Yeah, I would like a recorded vote on it.
Does anybody have any questions? Any speakers? No? Okay, on the item, EX 9.5, recorded vote.
Counselor Bradford, please.
Oh, okay, hold on. Cancel that vote. So, Counselor Bradford, do you have an amendment on it?
Yes, apologies. That just happened really quickly. I have a motion here on behalf of Councillor Robinson that I'd like to table here. Put it on the screen. City Council requests GM Parks, Forestry and Recreation to consider future facility improvements to the Jean-Marie Community Center and the potential for additional multipurpose space to serve the Thorncliffe Park neighborhood based on the current needs assessment work being undertaken that considers population growth, cultural needs and opportunities both within and existing facility and surrounding community, and to report out through future years' capital plans.
We have the amendment by Counselor Bradford. On favor? Carried. On the item as amended, recorded vote.
Counselor Karygiannis, please. Counselor Matlow.
Counselor Wong Tam, Counselor Filion, Counselor Perks, and Deputy Mayor Min Wong, and Counselor Perruzza, please.
Counselor Fletcher, when you're seated. We're going to page. And Counselor Cressy, when you're seated.
The item is amended, carries unanimously, 25 in favor.
This morning, we brought forward EX 9.8, which is the Planning Act, Section 37 and Section 45 Reserve Fund Statement, 2016 and 18. So, does anybody have any questions on that? No? Does anybody want to speak? It's on the screen. Okay. On the item, on favor, carried. No, is it? Our next item on page 5, EC 8.13, assessing fire safety and fire code compliance. Councillor Ainsley, you held the item down. Do you have questions to staff?
I can release it.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions to staff? On the item? On favor? Carried. Okay. Do I need to slow down?
You're doing great.
Pardon? Okay. Page 6, GL 8.8, update on fire and life safety. Councillor Ainsley, you held the item down. Do you have questions?
No, I don't. Clerks are just finessing a motion for me that staff just reviewed.
You have a motion? Does the staff have the copy of the motion?
They do.
Okay.
I don't have any questions. I can move it as a quick item if you want.
Okay, could you move your motion?
Yep.
Okay.
So this item was before general government licensing. It was also parts of it were heard at the audit committees. So I'm just moving this motion for a report back to the general government licensing, and it falls in line with what was recommended at the audit committee as well. And also for the information to be released in an open data format.
Okay, does anybody have any questions? On the amendment, all in favor? Carried. Item is amended, all in favor? Carried. Okay, our next item is on page 6, GL 8.16, City of Toronto 2019-23 Green Fleet Plan. Councillor Layton, you held the item down. Do you have questions to staff?
No.
Oh. Does anybody have any questions to staff? To speak, Councillor Layton.
Yes, thank you very much. I believe my colleague, Councillor Ainsley, has the motion that I would have moved, but I'm glad that he's taking carriage of it and had it in advance. It's just really important to acknowledge that based on the climate emergency declaration that the Mayor and I put forward at our last council meeting, we have to update some of these strategies and plans. This one in particular had our old target of 80% reduction from 1990 levels by 2050, and I believe the motion coming forward is going to advance that to a net zero by 2050 being the new goal. There's also a recommendation here that will report back, I have no doubt, that when our plan, Transform TO, is improved as a result of the work we'll do leading into next year, that we will have to advance some of these targets faster. Having returned from C40 with the Mayor, Councillor McKelvey, Councillor Thompson, it's clear that other cities around the world are also taking their fleet, their purchasing power more seriously. We don't have regular authority over the emissions from vehicles. We don't, unfortunately. But what we do have that can impact transportation patterns, not only in approving buildings and built form, is use our purchasing power as a city in conjunction with other cities around the world to try to drive the market towards zero emission, low carbon and zero emission vehicles. We need to do that. This is several steps in that direction, but will no doubt have to be updated when we update our Transform TO. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ainsley.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I do have a motion that I would like to move, and as Councillor Layton said, so this item was heard at general government licensing prior to the Mayor and Councillor Layton going to the C40 summit. So this is basically putting the work that Fleet Services did, and I want to thank the staff for all of their hard work on this. Basically brings it in line with what the city is trying to do, undertaking with the climate declaration work. Thank you.
Okay, so if we can put the amendments on the screen. All in favor? Carried. Item is amended. All in favor? Carried. Okay, so where is the audit? Oh, okay. Page 7, IE 8.5, update on flood mitigation. Councillor Cressy is here with a recommendation. You held the item down. Do you have questions?
I don't.
Does anybody have any questions?
Are you speaking on this?
Okay, Councillor Cressy, you'd like to speak?
I can speak briefly, and I understand that Councillors Crawford as well as Pasternak also have amendments. I had asked for a supplementary report from staff, which is in front of me, and I think it's exceptionally helpful and worth a read, because this past summer we had flooding for the second time in 3 years on the islands, 100-year flooding for the second time. And we had flooding that, due to outstanding work by city staff, the TRCA and partners, even Toronto Fire, we were able to mitigate the impacts and keep the islands not only open but safe this year. But we know that an annual sandbagging effort is not the solution to rising water levels. And what is happening to Toronto Islands is also happening to neighborhoods from east to west and north to south in our city. And so whether we're dealing with basement flooding in York Southwestern, or we're dealing with rising water levels around the islands, or whether we're dealing with flooding along the waterfront in Scarborough, we know that this is part of climate change adaptation. And so in front of us today in the supplementary report is a detailed breakdown on the long-term mitigation measures that are underway right now. I want to thank staff for that hard work. And this is a file that we're going to have to stay on top of collectively. It's not just about the islands, it's about our neighborhoods, because our geography hasn't changed, but our climate has. And so I want to thank staff for their work. We're going to continue to stay on it collectively this upcoming season. And with that, I'll conclude my remarks, and I understand that some of my colleagues have amendments as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Crawford.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just have a small amendment I'd like to make, is that City Council requests the General Manager, Parks, Forestry and Recreation to identify and provide a list of all waterfront properties that have been subject to flooding and those properties which have lease agreements with the city, and B, to identify available options to address impacts from flooding and to provide details for a complaint process framework, which may include requests for mitigation or adverse impacts such as rebate programs or any other types of relief. Just very quickly, I represent a number of leasees who have agreements with the City of Toronto, primarily boat. Yeah, that's houseboat motion, but they have had some challenges in looking to a framework as we move forward in trying to address some of the concerns they have with flooding. So this just sort of adds that other layer to give them that opportunity to be part of the process.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Pasternak.
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. I do have a motion. City Council requested the General Manager Toronto Water report for the Infrastructure Environment Committee by the first quarter of 2020 with a formula to modify the current cost per benefiting property threshold of $32,000 to allow for exemptions and sensible flexibility when proceeding with detailed design and construction estimates related to basement flooding protection programs. Well, I mean, I think this motion speaks for itself. We have hundreds of homes, perhaps thousands of homes, excluded from infrastructure upgrades across our city because of this cap. We need some flexibility. We'd like staff to bring a report back to see how we might deal with it. What does this have to do with flooding on the island? Well, flooding on the island was costing $61,000 per household if you work out the calculations. Now, it is true, some of it was parks funding and part of it was road infrastructure. But when you add it all up, when you take the number of residents on the island and the amount of money we're spending, we were in around $60,000 per household. So my residents and Councillor Nunziata's residents and other residents are saying, wait a minute, I'm told I can't get any of these upgrades to protect my home because it's going to cost more than $32,000. How on earth is this going on at $61,000? That being said, I just wanted to thank staff for this report.
Clearly, the islands are a valued treasure for the City of Toronto. We have made the commitment through this report and through council vote, which I guess will come in the next minute, to save the islands. And at the same time, the TRCA, which I am now a proud member, is also committed to saving the islands. But when you save the islands and save the shoreline, you're saving the rest of Toronto, because you're putting together a solid, funded resiliency strategy to make sure that our shorefront neighborhoods, our shorefront assets and infrastructure is protected. And that approach, that investment, will filter down to the other communities and river systems throughout our city. So I was watching on the news every night about the sandbag brigades. That was costing $100,000 a week, but to save the islands, I think it was worth it. But clearly there's some more work to do to make sure there's a comprehensive plan in place, to make sure the funds are there to do it, but most important, to do it correctly. And I think with our team, TRCA, and strong local representative, I think we can get it done. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, so if we can put the motions on the screen. Okay, motion 1 is on the screen. Recorded vote.
Councillor Carroll, please.
Councillor Matlow, when you're seated.
The amendment carries unanimously, 23 in favor.
Okay. The other amendment by Councillor Pasternak, recorded vote.
Councillor Bailao, please.
Councillor Perruzza, please.
The amendment carries unanimously, 22 in favor.
Okay, item as amended. Pardon? Oh, no, yeah, because it's here with our recommendation. Okay, thank you. That's it for that item. Page 7, IE 8.8. Councillor Lai, you held the item down.
Madam Speaker.
Do you have questions to staff?
No,
Does anybody have any questions?
I have a motion.
Update on council requested road safety initiatives?
I have a motion, Madam Speaker.
Yeah, I just want to know if anybody has any questions. Nobody has questions? Okay, to speak, Councillor Lai.
Thank you. Can staff please put a motion on the screen? Just make a very, very tiny amendment here. On July council meeting, I actually defer this speed reduction until further consultation with my community. I did hold a town hall meeting, and I actually asked for a raise of hand, for show of hand, how many agree and how many don't agree. And majority of people do not agree for the speed limit reduction. And they say that maybe there are some other reason why they weren't, the accident wasn't caused by the speed, that nobody was speeding and all that because of, left turn, right turn, the lighting, and there's a lot of reason that they came up with that. And also I attended a lot of community association AGMs, and I've also consulted with them and asked them. And to my surprise, actually, a lot of people don't want the speed reduction. But as a local councillor, and I'm very familiar with these three roads, and I actually think that Brimley Road require, because it's a very residential area, and McCowan Road require the reduction because there's a lot of senior that lives in along that road, you know, Finch and McCowan and the Alton Tower area. But I actually have researched myself on Markham Road, driving during the day or in the evening, and most of the area are industrial, and they don't have too many pedestrians, or it's not commercial at all, and there are some highways, and it's not really that much. So I just thought I'd put a motion here to exclude the Markham Road from Milner to Steeles Avenue East for the speed reduction from 60 kilometers to 50 kilometers. Hope I can count your support.
A question for you, Councillor Karygiannis, clarification.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I just want to clarify that the councillor is okay with lowering the speeds on Brimley and McCowan, but she wants to leave Markham at 60. Would that be correct?
Yes, that's correct.
In view of the accidents that are happening lately, Councillor, in the roads that are very wide, do you want to reconsider and move that Markham, being a six-lane highway, gets reduced down to 50? I think people, if they want to get hit at 50, will have a better chance of surviving versus 60.
What's the question, Councillor?
My question is, would you reconsider it about getting it down to 50?
I'm sorry, I still don't get your question.
My question is simple. You're advocating for Markham to be 60. In view of the road being so wide, and we have so many accidents lately, as in Midland and Shepherd, would you reconsider and ask for this to be lowered down to 50 versus 60?
Well, I know that the Midland and Shepherd one, the driver weren't being charged even. So it's not about speeding. So I think it's more about how we enforce. So basically, if we can install more red light camera, maybe that will be better. That will enforce better.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Councillor Carroll, question?
I'm just wondering, was the opinion gathered community by community, or did they look at all three roads together? Were they meetings where they were looking
All
at all
together,
three roads?
three roads together.
Is there not a concern? I mean, there's a stretch on Markham Road at one point where there's a plaza, there's a McDonald's. Kids run all the way over there. Kids sometimes go through the industrial area from Malvern all the way to get over there, because there's a bunch of things. There's a chocolate shop and things like that. I've had to be careful to avoid jaywalkers out there. Are you not concerned that you'll have a series of roads in which one is the outlier that's still 60 kilometers and the others are 50?
It's not a serious road. I think the next, McCowan and Middlefield. Middlefield is 60. And Markham Road is, if it can remain 60.
Yeah, I question leaving Middlefield out. I think we really ought to be consistent.
Because I think if you have...
There's a lot of pedestrianism on Middlefield at this point.
I don't see too many pedestrians there myself. I mean, I know the area. I'm the ward councillor.
So Steeles, we adopted to be 50. Finch, we adopted to be 50. Some of your north-south roads will be 50, but one will be 60. You're not concerned about the lack of harmony there?
Not just this one. I mean, Middlefield is 60, and Markham is, if we're going to remain Markham to be 60, I think Midland, there's one pocket of Midland is 60 as well.
Okay. As long as they were looking at all of them together, those are their opinions.
Thank you. Councillor Bradford?
Thanks very much. Just through the chair, did you have a chance to discuss this with staff, this motion?
Yes, I did. Actually, we did have staff to have a presentation. The Vision Zero team actually went out to my town hall to explain everything to the residents, yes.
And so the motion that we have here to exclude or omit that particular street from a lowered speed limit, did you have a chance to discuss that piece with staff?
Yes, we did.
And what was the feedback that you had received?
The staff said they're still going ahead with this recommendation.
So the staff recommendation still stands to
Yes.
lower the speed limit? Okay. And when the staff gave the presentation on Vision Zero with the community, did they outline some of the reasons why on our arterial roads like this in suburban areas, it's particularly important to reduce speed limits in light of all the fatalities that we've had this year?
Well, staff did make the presentation, and they said 40% of the fatalities are left turn, and some of them are being, the intersection are being not well lighted. And also, the reason why in Midland and Shepherd, because all the trees were not trimmed properly. So there's different reason for that, and it's not just about speeding.
But they probably mentioned that speed isn't in fact a key factor in killed or serious injured.
Yes, they did.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Matlow to speak.
Madam Speaker, yesterday in one day, 3 seniors, 2 in Toronto and 1 in Mississauga, were tragically hit by drivers driving motor vehicles. And this keeps happening over and over and over again. And every time these things happen, we say we've got to do something about it. We know what we need to do about it. Vision Zero throughout the world, where cities are being determined and focused to see them through to fruition at a pace that matters. Do all 3 pillars of what Vision Zero really means. One is regulatory reform, and that's what we're addressing right now in the debate with Councillor Lai. Safer speeds, ensuring that roads are at safer speeds based on reports that we've received from our own medical officer of health, who has said that lower speeds mean that you will be more likely to survive if you are hit by a car. How can we responsibly ignore that advice? Another pillar of Vision Zero, understood around the world, is road redesign, better visual cues, ensuring that we do everything we can in a thoughtful way to ensure that each of our roads are designed in a way that promotes safety. Many of our roads were not designed that way initially. And then the last part, obviously, is enforcement, both human resources and technology, which we need to improve to be able to enforce the rules that we're even discussing today. Far too often, even when we put new numbers on the signs, they're ignored by far too many drivers. Sometimes because of selfishness, sometimes they're looking at their phones, but far too few people are adhering to the rules that we even put up the signs in the first place. So the reason that I ask, with all due respect to Councillor Lai, who I know is reflecting what you heard at her meeting, but why I ask us all to respectfully disagree with Councillor Lai and support the staff recommendation is because safety isn't something that should be about just a show of hands in a meeting. The facts remain that we know that whether it be our kids, whether it be our parents, whether it be our friends or family, anyone we love and anyone you love, if they're hit by a car at a higher speed, they are more likely to die. So that's not the kind of thing that you just kind of show how many hands are at a meeting. You do the right thing. When I worked with Councillor Perks and others at Toronto and East York Community Council to lower the speed limits in Toronto and East York, I was worried. It was right before the election. I didn't know how it would be received, right? I didn't know if it would just go be really unpopular. I didn't know. But the medical officer of health was so unequivocal with his recommendations at that time that I felt a responsibility to act, and every member of Toronto and East York Community Council felt the same way. And we worked together and we got it done. What happened was that we found it was actually very popular, that people received it really well. They knew why we were doing it. They're still demanding for better enforcement. That's something that we need to continue to advocate for.
but we did that for the right reasons. And I guess I just ask us all, like, don't be afraid of the popular or the political pushback. I think most people will support us at the end of the day. And I think more people who are informed and understand the facts of why we're making those decisions, and our job as leaders is to provide that information to them as well, will come around and understand why we have to really modernize the rules of roads that were built many years before and designed in ways that were not safe. And we're trying to update that. We're trying to make them safe for today. The last thing I just want to add, with just the 40 seconds remaining, we've been incrementally rolling out a Vision Zero strategy where we've got, community safety zones and senior safety zones and this and that. I don't believe we should be having these community safety zones anymore. I don't believe that we should be having senior safety zones anymore. The entire city should be a safety zone. And I really am convinced that if we invest the appropriate amount, I know it's a lot, but I think safety is worth it. I think it's a good investment to protect the people we love in our city, that if we audit the streets of our city, look at the regulations, look at the road design, look at reconfiguration when necessary, and fight to get better enforcement, we'll do our jobs well. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Karygiannis?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, it wasn't too long ago that we were talking about Vision Zero, and I pushed for lowering the speed limits on Shepherd, Finch, and the rest of my streets down to 50. Lo and behold, a little while after that, there was a young lady by the name of Charmaine that crossed on the street on Shepherd. It's a Shepherd at that point in time is a 5-lane highway, 2 lanes coming, 2 lanes going, and the central lane for changing. She was going across the street in order to grab the bus at the stop, and she was killed. The streets in Scarborough, they were built back in the 60s and the 70s. Those streets are wide. Drivers tend a tendency to speed, and not enforcing lower speeds. When drivers know that it's a 60, they will speed up to 75, 80. We all do it. There's nobody in this room that says, if I have an open road, I won't speed. And if an older person or a pedestrian crosses across, the chances of them making it, or the chances of the driver being able to see them, is very unlikely. So I would ask my colleague to reconsider her motion of leaving Markham at 60. Markham is a very wide street. It's got 3 lanes going, 3 lanes coming. There's a lot of trucks that are going down on Markham. There's a lot of traffic that goes down on Markham. Everybody that comes up from just north of Steeles at Markham goes down Markham Road in order to go catch the 401. And if we were to lower that speed at 50, people just might go, when they travel, do 60 or 65. If any pedestrian was to get hit, the chances of them surviving will be much higher than leaving the speed at 60 and people doing 75 and 80. So I would ask my colleague to reconsider and ask you not to support 60. We need to lower the speeds in Scarborough. I've done it in my ward. I know others have worked to do it, and leave Markham at 60 is certainly something that will only encourage people to speed down the street. Yeah, there's been a couple of people that might come to your town hall meetings and they say, oh, we want our speed faster and faster. To those people, I say, get up a little bit earlier, get off work a little bit earlier, and take the time to go home. Let's make sure at the end of the night that we all arrive home safe. What would we, any one of us that is the ones that support the 60 mark, say to a pedestrian, be it tomorrow, be it 5 days, be it a month from now, if a pedestrian was hit and be killed? What we say to that family? What are we going to say to the families that are saying lower the speed? So in view of that, I ask of you please to support the 50 mark. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Layton.
You know, it pains me a little bit, and I can't believe I'm about to say this, but Councillor Karygiannis is right.
Billboard. Billboard.
Well, you know how to get space on a billboard better than I do, I suspect. But if I may, there's one piece of the report that I wanted to point out, that's something that came out in our questions to staff that I think are more important than this one road. And with the deepest respect to the local councillor, this is a major road in the city of Toronto. There has been an enormous outcry, and with good reason, for the number of fatalities on our roads in recent years, and that's why staff came back with these reductions. And on our arterials, I'm quite happy looking to staff for their advice on how we should proceed. But the other thing, and the other piece to this, was on questioning when I asked how long it takes to get a set of lights, not pedestrian crossover, but to get a set of traffic lights put in, the actual install time after we say yes, so after you vote in favor of lights to make an intersection safer, the wait time is 1.5 years at best. And there are some reasons around that. They bundle the projects together, then they put them out to tender, probably to save money. But they're paying a company to design the lights, and then we have our experts go over and make sure they're designed correctly. There's something fundamentally wrong there. The work's getting done twice. You see, we're paying for one company to do it, and then we're checking to see, and then we're bundling it together, and then we're putting it out there. We know we're going to be constantly doing this work. Why wouldn't we try to just bring this work in-house and to start actually having our teams put the work in so that we could try to execute on this work faster? So I don't have a motion. I just wanted to flag this for people, because that's after you guys many of you have done this before. You do a traffic study, you get a report, then you come here. How long does that take? Councillor Grimes? Oh, come on. That's about a year. It's about a year. Then you add the 1.5 years, you're at 2.5 years. I've got one instance where I have a developer paying for it. The developer is doing some work for the city on site, and it's still 1.5 years to get a light at Price and Young for the development. But Mark Grimes can get it done for me in a weekend. The notion that it takes that long is unfortunately unacceptable. I don't have a solution for you here today, but I'm hoping that that's something we can work on to reduce that amount of time as part of our Vision Zero experts. So there's a backlog of them. Let's just try to get them done and put in faster.
Thank you. Mayor Tory.
Madam Speaker, thank you. I may be able to outdo Councillor Layton in that I want to associate myself with all of the comments of Councillors Matlow, Karagianis, and Layton. And I just want to say, look, I think, when we talk often around here about evidence-based decision-making, since 2014, on the stretch of Brimley Road that is meant to be covered by the speed limit reduction, there have been 2 fatalities and 7 serious injuries. On Markham Road, the one that is proposed to be deleted, there have been 2 fatalities and 9 serious injuries. On McCowan, there have been 3 fatalities and 8 serious injuries. And that is precisely the problem when we did the deep dive on the analysis of the deaths and injuries, serious injuries that were taking place in Markham. It was these kinds of roads, as a number of the preceding speakers have said, Madam Speaker, that presented the problem. And there is not one easy answer to it. There are a number of things we have to do, including more signalized intersections, more crosswalks, red light cameras, automated speed enforcement, but also what goes with automated speed enforcement is, of course, the right speed limit that maximizes the chances of safety for people. And so I think that we've had that evidence, and I do really respect the fact that the Councillor Lai has spent the time that she did talking to her constituents. And normally my practice here, especially on local matters and on community council matters, is to go with the local councillor or go with the community council, because I don't sit at those community councils, and I think I should respect what they say. And in this case, I guess I'm saying the same thing, although I do regret the fact that puts me against something that Councillor Lai wants and that she believes she heard from her people. But in the end, that's a total of 7 fatalities and 24 serious injuries on these 3 places. And we carefully selected the staff helped us to carefully select where these speed limit reductions would be applied on those wide streets that were made that way. In many cases, they have very little access and egress because there aren't plazas and driveways along there. There's kind of neighborhoods that back onto those streets, and people drive too fast. And it comes back to something I said to the media this morning, which is that we simply have to change human behavior, but it'll start, at least in some instances, with a speed limit reduction, and then hopefully the use of the automated enforcement going forward. Just two more things to say, Madam Speaker. One is I want everybody to sort of send a message telepathically or however we can do it to Queen's Park to have them continue to move along with the automated speed enforcement approval, because we've said we want to implement it in December, and we do, and we need to. And secondly, I should just say to Councillor Layton that just this morning we were discussing in my office, and I will, I think, probably have a meeting with Barbara Gray tomorrow, and her team are working very hard on all this, but to make sure that they're prioritizing the projects that they're doing, and to see if there are ways in which we can speed them up, because what we do have right now is a significant backlog on applications for crosswalks, for example, and I can't speak to every one of those any more than anybody else here could, but many of them are ones we should be putting in the interest of this public safety and this problem in particular, and we need to get them done somehow faster, and whether it's the way that Councillor Layton suggested or otherwise, we've got to find a better way to do these things faster, because I think we're actually in favor, and the local councillors want these done, but they're just not getting done fast enough, with the exception of the miraculous accomplishment of Councillor Grimes. So I'm going to work on that tomorrow. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor, you are up next, Councillor Cole, but first a point of privilege, Councillor Matlow.
Thank you. I wanted to acknowledge that we are debating an item that Councillor Robinson would have a lot to say about if she was here. And I just wanted to say, both as a colleague, a friend, and as a fellow Midtown councillor who serves the Yonge and Eglinton community with Jay, that I just want to acknowledge whether or not I've agreed or disagreed with her on certain aspects of Vision Zero, sometimes the pace. We've had disagreements and debates. But no one can deny her commitment and dedication to road safety in the city and the leadership that she has provided. And I just wanted to say publicly how much I miss her, whether we vote together or not on any item. So miss seeing her in this chamber today, and I wish her my love and support and the best as she faces the challenge.
Thank you, Councillor Matlow. Possibly not a point of privilege, because no one has in fact offended Councillor Robinson's honor in any way, but I'm sure the comment is heartfelt. I'm going to move now to Councillor Cole.
Yes, out of this motion by Councillor Lau, there's obviously some significant issues that her motion has raised. And I think it's a combination of what Councillor Layton said and the Mayor said. You know, we can put up and reduce all the speed limits we want, but if there isn't any enforcement out there, there's no enforcement, because the police are so busy doing everything else. We're asking them to deal with gun crime, drug crime. So we need to move out of the horse and buggy era and start to deploy technology. You know, we've got the automated speed enforcement camera. We've been using that since 1998 when we had the red light cameras. And we can't seem to get around to using this technology basically to help in enforcement. It's beyond me why this isn't deployed like yesterday. And sure, it's the province, who, by the way, has not even passed the regs yet. The province has not even passed the regulations. Never mind asking them, which we've asked repeatedly, for the regs. They haven't passed the regs for the automated. So talk about the need to get into the modern era of danger on our streets. So again, you know, we can say we're going to reduce, we're going to increase speed limits on our roads, but without the enforcement, it's very theoretical. Like, we got to push for this, and we also got to push for funding. As Councillor Layton says, I'm asking for a study now at Avenue Road and 401. Talk about traffic safety as people go about 100 miles an hour trying to get up Avenue Road to go to 401, or coming 100 miles an hour coming off the 401 to go down Avenue Road. You can't even dare approach an intersection without some guy in a Porsche going 100 miles an hour every day, every single day. We need that technology yesterday, and we need to expedite the reports. You know, as Councillor Layton said, it takes months and years to get signal lights. It takes all kinds of reports to get a four-way stop. Four-way stop signs. I have to go through hoops like you wouldn't believe to basically get in fact, people were so impressed. I got a four-way stop there up in Young Boulevard. They had a party they had a street party because they got a four-way stop. They couldn't believe that it was done in a couple of months. So that's what we should do as a result of Councillor Lai's motion. She brings to attention the need for us to start yelling and screaming about the province to get off their rear end and give us the ability to put in the automated speed enforcement cameras to save the lives of people in the City of Toronto. We need to do more to press them because, again, they haven't even had the courtesy of passing the regs. That's what they think of us.
Thank you, Councillor Cole. Speaker Nunziata is next.
Yes, thank you very much. Councillor Lai, I appreciate what you're trying to do for your constituents, but I can't support it. I'm getting hundreds of requests in my ward for residents wanting to reduce the speed limit to 30. And Councillor Holyday, you know, every council meeting I have tons of recommendations going through because people are very concerned about traffic and speed, and it's happening near the schools and everywhere. And yesterday, the 83-year-old senior that was hit was in my ward on St. Clair Avenue. There was actually two that were hit at that on St. Clair Avenue. But I'm in full support of reducing the speed limit and traffic calming on whatever street. And if residents in the community support it, I do support it. I'm one of the biggest supporters on traffic calming. I think just recently when I reduced the lanes on Scarlet Road from 4 to 2, where people were driving 80, 90 miles an hour. Councillor Ford, you know that because you drive there all the time, right? But not 80 and 90. No, okay. So what we did is we reduced the lane to 2 lanes, and we put bicycle lanes, and people were complaining. But you know, now it's been a few weeks since everything's been completed, and people are happy. We do see cyclists. And, you know, people just have to adjust to it. And so I think we have to do whatever it takes to reduce speed of traffic and make it safe for pedestrians, cyclists, and motorists on the street. So, Councillor, I'm sorry I can't support your motion.
Thank you, Councillor Nunziata. Councillor Perruzza.
Perruzza?
Oh, sorry. No, I'm sorry.
You know what, Speaker? I'd be happy to say
I know you would. Sorry, Councillor Pasternak. I had my wrong name, Councillor.
Thank you very much.
I'm restarting your clock.
Deputy Speaker, and thank you, Councillor Perruzza, for volunteering to step in for me to speak. And thank you, Councillor Grimes, for all the advice you've offered to me all day long. There's not a lot to add to the conversation. A lot of what has to be said has been said. The number one issue that is coming to many of our offices is traffic control, traffic calming, traffic safety, protecting pedestrians, protecting property damage, preventing injuries, preventing deaths. This is a key thing that the people of Toronto are looking to their government for, to make sure the laws of the road are obeyed, that people stop at stop signs, that people obey their signalized intersections, and that we implement many of the measures that we've been talking about through the Vision Zero program. It's been mentioned a couple of times, the wait time, the gap time between adopted city policy for a specific traffic calming strategy and the time of implementation. I had a crosswalk in Bathurst Manor at the corner of Searle and Wilmington approved before the last election, and it is yet to go in. And whether this is a staffing issue, whether it's a logistic issue, whether it's done in-house or whether it's done to a third party, is taking far too long to implement many of these strategies that we're adopting here. Regarding the local councillor and lowering speed limits, it is true that I often rely on the council and the advice of a local councillor for a local issue because they know their communities very well. But at the same time, I've spoken to other members of council here, and it is very important that we send a unified signal that we are determined to get everybody to take a deep breath, put down their cell phones, take away some of the distractions, and make sure that they slow down. Because when people are driving slower, they can react to unexpected persons trying to cross major arterial roads, whether it's mid-block or other, react to seniors and walkers who are trying to cross major secondary roads, and at the same time be able to react to any kind of incident or oncoming vehicle or other pedestrian that comes. If the faster you go, the more likely you are to get into an accident, to hurt someone, or to kill someone. So I think we have to speak as a united voice. I deeply respect the wishes of the local councillor, but at the same time, we have to make a firm, united statement that speed limits in the city must come down, that drivers must take a deep breath, we must emphasize safety, we must be alert behind the wheel, and we must make sure that everybody gets home safely at the end of each day. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Carroll?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So, Madam Speaker, my family has a nickname for me, Leadfoot. I have a lead foot. I drive too fast, and I drive a lot. I drive mostly in the suburbs on wider roads with lots and lots of lanes. And I started driving a little later on. I didn't actually have my driver's license until I was 33, when I had 2 children and thought, okay, this is not workable. And I fell in love with it. I love the feeling of a car. And luckily, my family has a million places to be. Spent a lot of time in Scarborough, go all the way out to Malvern Collegiate, use the roads we're talking about on a regular basis. I got a kid we drop off at McCowan and Elson. It's not even in the city of Toronto. We just keep driving and keep going. And the lucky part about that drop-off is then I can rationalize taking the 407 back where I really get to speed. But Madam Speaker, I realized I had to take speed to heart when the numbers started going up and up and up. I don't like to turn on the morning news anymore because we're going to find out who got hit yesterday and who got hit this morning before the sun even came up. That's what happened to me yesterday at Don Mills in Eglinton. I turned on Metro Morning to find out that Eglinton was shut down because of what was going on at Don Mills in Eglinton. This morning, 1 in Mississauga and 2 in Toronto. I don't like to even listen to the news anymore. So what I've done is realize, oh, dang, I'm the problem. I've had to start to pay attention. I've realized I have to live by example. I have to be the person who gets my own residents to stop killing people. The day we debated this in July, a pedestrian died in my ward. And so I am painfully aware of the speed limit now. And here's the good news. I'm actually enjoying driving more than I was before. I actually get a rush like I used to get out of a lovely curvy road that you speed down because it's just wide enough. I get a rush out of playing the game of, can I make that lit sign that tells us the speed we're traveling at, can I make it say exactly the speed limit? That's actually my fun of driving now. That's what Vision Zero was meant to do. We needed to do it to more and more drivers, to actually change their behavior. That's the point of all of this. And we are going to have to weather some controversy. Madam Speaker, I hope you won't mind my saying you just made comments that 12 years ago you might never have made. Actually, putting a road on a road diet made your neighborhood safer, and it would have been hard to weather that controversy a decade ago. But your residents sound like they're there now. They want this safety. Not all of them. You have to weather a little bit of people objecting, But by and large, people just want to stop having to turn on the radio in the morning and hear who's dead today because of a pedestrian fatality. They really don't want to hear it anymore. And so if we really ask them, is it okay with you that the number is going up every year when it should be going down? Most people will say, well, no, that's not good. And this is the way to get there. There's no other way around it. And so we got to get people to put away their lead feet and start to pay attention to how they drive anywhere in this city. Because the map shows us the fatalities are happening everywhere, and we need to change behavior everywhere. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Councillor Perruzza.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, I don't know what the answer is to making well, I kind of do, but I'm not sure that this is the way you get to safer roads, and you get to, you get to a place where fewer people get hit by cars. You get hit at 20 kilometers an hour, or 30, or 50, or 60, you're in big trouble, like really big trouble. Doesn't matter what speed you get hit at, right? Yes, it does. But I'll tell you something else that's very, very interesting. So I drive down from the outer limits of North York. I drive down to City Hall. Average speed, you got that average speed thing now on the cars. Most people have it, right? Average speed is around 19, 20, 21 kilometers an hour. That's how fast I get down here by car. Right? Irrespective of the speed limit, irrespective of everything else. It's just the way our city is designed, right? With traffic lights, lots of traffic, lots of people moving around. So not very fast. In fact, right, when I come down on my bicycle, average speed is around 23, 24 kilometers an hour. So I get down here faster on my bicycle than I get here in the car. So I don't know if creating the system where on one road you can go 50, another road 60, another road 40, another road 30, another road 100, that's going to get you to where we want to get to. I think uniformity is really, really important, for sure. No question about it. But I think what's really, really important to this whole conversation is vigilance. This summer I happened to be in Rome on my own dime. I should say that first, right? Took the kids there, right? And Councillor Carroll pulled up a statistics for me a little while ago and talked about how Rome has the same population as Toronto. Yeah, minus the tourists, right? But then when you add in the tourists, I don't know, it goes up exponentially, right? I don't know, they got like 120 million visitors or something, right? The city, not the country, the Vatican, right? They keep that stat because they you pay to go in to see the Sistine Chapel, right? So that, cha-ching, 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 that adds up, right? So there's a counter there, right? So you get lots and lots of people there. And what I noticed was that there's some chaos in the city. Chaos between the cars, the scooters, the Vespas, the bicycles, the pedestrians. But you know what's really remarkable in that chaos? Is that chaos breeds vigilance. It does.
More chaos in Toronto.
It does. So before you step off a curb, before you step out onto the road, you look left, you look right, because if you don't, you're done. The conversation isn't all one-sided. To stand here and try to create the impression that somehow, just simply by lowering the speed limit 10 kilometers an hour, all of a sudden, deal done, safe road. Nothing could be further from the truth. It's a very, very complex equation. But we've been dumbing it down, just simply because every once in a while somebody will stand up and reminds us that studies have shown that if you just simply gum it up, slow it down, everybody's safe. Nothing could be further from the truth. It's a complex equation, and we should start by being honest with ourselves and treating it honestly. As opposed to dumbing it down in a way that just simply herds us all in one direction, and thinking that somehow we're doing something about a problem or an issue, and we're really not.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Thank you.
So am I.
Chaos is king.
Okay. Oh, Councillor Holliday to speak.
Thanks, Madam Speaker. Listening to the debate, I'll be really quick. I just think this is a representation of how we get it wrong as council. I know we've sparred at community council before. I'm of the firm belief that politics and road engineering don't mix well. At the end of the day, these are systems, these are cars, these are people, these are engineering principles that govern the way that these roads operate. I know I look to the advice of the staff on this because their advice is neutral. It's not swayed by the users or the locals, the local residents who all have different viewpoints. You know, case in point, Markham. If you're going to consult Markham Road, if you're going to consult the community, who do you consult? Do you consult the 20,000 cars that probably use the road? Because they're a stakeholder. Do you consult the people that live near there? Do you consult the people that might use the sidewalk? Like, how do you weigh all that out? What I've learned in my time here is I can rely on neutral advice from the staff in the city. So I'm not going to support the amendment to change it, much in the same way I don't support amendments to install a stop sign or a traffic light or a speed bump where the transportation staff have said it doesn't belong there. Because at the end of the day, sometimes these controls are controversial. And even worse, sometimes these controls can make it worse. You know, if there's an accident on this street, a collision actually, is use the correct language, you know, it matters what the speed limit is. If it's too high or too low, it can cause that collision to occur. So I think we just need to be transparent in how we reach these decisions. And we can rely on people that don't bring politics into the mix, and that's the staff. And so for that reason, you know, I think we should think carefully about supporting a change to a recommendation that's brought forward to us by those that made that recommendation without a view to politics. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, so if we can put the motion on the screen. Okay. Recorded vote. Pardon? You want it separated? No, it's fine. Oh, okay.
Councillor Cole?
Councillor Matlow, when you're seated.
Thank you.
The amendment does not carry. The vote is 3 to 22.
You want to reopen it, Councillor Perks? Okay, all in favor of reopening? Carried. Okay, let's vote again.
Counselor Perruzza, please.
Thank you.
The amendment does not carry. The vote is 5 to 20.
Oh, my God. Counselor Matlow, I thought you got up and supported Vision Zero. Okay, let's reopen on favor. Okay, we are voting on the motion. Count, everyone, we're voting on Councillor Lai's motion. This will be the last time. Well, yes, I can. Recorded vote. 3 times you're out.
The amendment does not carry. The vote is 3 to 22.
Okay, that's it. Okay, so members, we do have some members' motion that we have to introduce. Oh, on the item, all in favor? Carried. So we do have some members' motion we'll introduce, and then a bill, and then we'll recess. Okay. Councillor Crawford.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This is on behalf of Councillor Robinson. It's at the TLAPB minor variance. Try that again.
On favor? Carried. Councillor Crawford, you have another one.
Yeah, I'll correct that and say TLAB.
Tila. There's another one.
Oh, there's 3? Okay.
Yeah.
Recorded, Speaker.
These are just to introduce.
This is to introduce. You want a recorded vote? Okay, recorded vote.
Counselor Grimes, thank you. Counselor Carroll? Counselor Wong Tam, please.
Counselor Karygiannis, when you're seated. Counselor Bailao.
This is just to introduce.
The motion to introduce the item carries unanimously, 24 in favor.
Okay, who's next? Councillor Thompson.
Yes, Speaker. Yes, this is to introduce an item to get staff to look at some new technology to deal with some of the issues that we're facing with pedestrian fatalities in the city.
Okay, on favor? When you went to Rome, did you see the Pope? I just had to say that.
Counselor Layton and Counselor Cressy and Counselor Matlow.
Counselor Pasternak, please, and Counselor Wong Tam, please.
Yeah.
Motion to add the item carries unanimously, 24 in favor.
Councillor Fletcher, you have 2?
Yes, I do, Speaker. Thank you. This is to introduce a T-Lab, please. Staff have asked me to do that.
On favor? Recorded.
Councillor Matlow, Councillor Karygiannis, Councillor Bailao.
Oops, the motion carries unanimously, 23 in favor.
Councillor Fletcher?
Yes, please, this is urgent, because we can't do this until we have that agreement with Toronto Hydro.
Recorded vote?
Councillor Layton, Councillor Cressy. Councillor Layton and Councillor Cressy, please.
The motion to introduce carries unanimously, 23 in favor.
Councillor Bailao?
Madam Speaker, I'd like to introduce this motion. It's to address some issues that they're influencing the loss of rental housing stock.
Recorded vote.
The motion carries 22 to 1.
Councillor Wong Tam?
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Speaker. This motion is urgent as the hearing of the appeal of the local planning appeal tribunal is scheduled for this coming Thursday.
All in favor?
Councillor Bailao, please.
The motion carries 20, it's unanimous, 23 in favor.
That's it? Yes. Councillor Grimes, you have a motion to introduce certain bills.
I do, Madam Speaker, that leave be granted to introduce bills 1458 and 1497.
Thank you. Shall leave be granted to introduce these bills? Recorded vote.
Councillor Pasternak, Councillor Grimes, please.
Councillor Layton, please. Councillor Thompson.
It's a rule.
The motion to introduce the bills carries unanimously, 23 in favor.
Shall these bills be passed and declared as a bylaw? Recorded vote. It's a rule. Look. Yeah, okay. Oh.
Councillor Perks, Councillor Filion, Councillor Wong Tam.
Councillor Bailao, please, and Councillor Matlow.
motion to enact the bills carries unanimously, 23 in favor.
Councillor Holliday, you have a motion to introduce the confirming bill.
Yes, I do. Thank you, Speaker. That leave be granted to introduce a bill to confirm to the point of the introduction of this motion the proceedings of City Council, Meeting 11, on October 29th, 2019.
Thank you. Shall leave be granted to introduce this bill? Recorded vote.
Councillor Bradford, please.
Counselor Wong Tam, please. Thank you.
The motion to introduce the confirming bill carries unanimously, 23 in favor.
Shall this bill be passed and declared as a bylaw? Recorded vote.
Counselor Wong Tam, Counselor Filion, Counselor Perks, Counselor Grimes, please. Counselor Perruzza.
Councillor Thompson.
The motion to enact the confirming bill carries 21 to 2.
Okay, thank you. We'll recess to 9:30 tomorrow. Thank you very much.